Meet Logan McLean, our main character and the eldest heir to a noble house that's drowning in massive debt. The mansion's maids tremble in his presence. Honestly, can't blame them. One look at his face explains everything. The guy looks like a literal demon crawled out of hell. One afternoon, Logan heads to the castle to see his father. But the guards block his path at the gates. No entry. Their reason is cold-blooded. They claim he's simply not worthy. To them, he's just the son of the Baron's ex-wife. Within these walls, Logan is either feared or utterly despised. Until now, he really was an arrogant bottom-tier jerk. But the script of his life is about to be flipped. This isn't the same Logan they remember. The guard's blatant disrespect ignites a fire of irritation within him. Logan reaches into his coat, pulls out his gloves, and slaps them right across the guard's arrogant face. It's a total public execution of pride. In this world, that gesture means only one thing: a duel to the death. Logan doesn't stop. He mocks the guard, telling him the only true failure standing here is the man in uniform. Called a mediocre soldier for life, Dominic snaps. Blazing with pure rage, he accepts the challenge on the spot. They march to the arena, opting for wooden swords. But don't be fooled, knights can channel deadly aura through wood. An elite knight can easily crush a weakling. The onlookers genuinely fear they're about to witness the young master's end. To the crowd, Logan is a certified loser. Dominic lunges with zero restraint, pouring every ounce of aura into his strike. But Logan dodges with god-tier precision, slipping through the air to counterstrike right over Dominic's defense. The impact is thunderous, vibrating through the guard's arm until his weapon flies right out of his grip. The audience goes dead silent. Whispers erupt. How did this so-called loser learn to fight like a seasoned veteran? Logan isn't finished. He offers Dominic a second chance, but the soldier is stuck on the ground, paralyzed by shock. Staring at his trembling hands, Dominic can't deny the truth. That blow was devastating. Logan doesn't wait for a reply. He closes the gap, raining down strikes with his wooden sword. It's pure, unadulterated payback for every insult. By the time it's over, the castle guards are shaken. Prince Logan isn't the pathetic weakling he used to be. The secret behind this sudden transformation is beyond their imagination. The truth: he's a regressor from the future. In his past life, 40-year-old Logan was a mere grunt. His noble family had been wiped off the map. His comrades mocked him daily, never letting him forget how he lost a duel to his own younger brother. They couldn't fathom how a disgraced noble like him survived after his entire bloodline was brutally exterminated. Back then, betrayal tore the kingdom apart as enemies invaded. Logan fought like a madman alongside his brothers in arms. It was all for nothing. The kingdom fell and everyone was purged. That day, Logan drew his final breath on the battlefield. As darkness took him, soul-crushing regret set in. He hated the arrogant, terrible person he had once been. His dying wish was to beg his father for forgiveness. Then suddenly, Logan bolts upright in his old room. He'd been knocked unconscious during a duel with his brother. The gravity of the situation hits him like a truck. Our hero can't believe his eyes. Was his entire life of suffering just a nightmare? No, it felt way too real. Every memory is crystal clear. Logan peers out the window at his family's castle exactly as it was in his youth. Moments later, his brother Ronan enters, visibly shaking with fear over how Logan might lash out at him. The boy is a nervous wreck, and for good reason. Logan had always been a monster, especially toward him. Logan recalls the last time he treated Ronan like trash, the very reason his brother never dared to get close. Memories flood Logan's mind. Ronan genuinely loved his brother, despite Logan's reputation for being a complete nightmare. Rick the butler tells young Ronan to leave for his own safety. But for once, Logan doesn't explode in anger. Instead, he speaks with a gentle tone, asking Ronan to step closer. The boy and the butler freeze in disbelief. They think the young master has lost his mind. Logan wants to praise Ronan's talent, but the words catch in his throat. He knows talk is cheap after years of abuse. So Logan does the unthinkable. He pulls his brother into a hug. He begs for forgiveness, admitting he was a failure of a brother and that Ronan was always the amazing one. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. After a long talk, Ronan finally leaves his heart slightly healed. Now alone, our protagonist looks out at the horizon once more with a new light in his eyes. He realizes this is his ultimate chance to rewrite the tragic destiny of his family and his kingdom. He won't let history repeat itself. This time, he'll be the legendary leader who carries them all to victory. This was no hallucination. He'd actually rewound the clock, and this time everything was going to be different. His family's survival was now priority one. Suddenly, a maid stumbled in her face, pale as she stuttered apologies. Rick scrambled in right behind her, begging for forgiveness and swearing Mary hadn't meant to disturb him. It was honestly annoying. Logan finally saw how absurd it was for everyone to treat him like a monster. Recalling his past pathetic self, Logan dismissed them calmly, simply requesting some writing supplies instead of lashing out. The pair spiraled into a panic, terrified that the young master might actually be planning to do work. When the supplies arrived, Logan offered a genuine thanks. Rick froze, unable to believe his ears. A simple thank you left the staff dazed. Watching them, Logan cringed at what a total scumbag he'd been. Dismissing them to focus, a grim memory surfaced. 10 years. That's when the devastating war against the Empire begins. That conflict would bankrupt and slaughter his kin. Now, his path was set in stone. He wasn't just rebranding his image, he was rewriting the destiny of his entire bloodline. Worse yet, a local civil war was looming in just 1 year, the catalyst for his territory's ultimate downfall. After hours of frantic planning, Logan stood up. It was time for a long-overdue confrontation with his father. Navigating the halls, he saw servants instinctively averting their gaze, treating him like a walking death sentence. They truly feared he'd execute them for breathing wrong. Suddenly, a maid clutching fresh laundry rounded the corner. She didn't see him tripped and hit the floor hard. She was instantly paralyzed with pure terror. She braced for the end, but death never came. Instead, Logan extended a surprisingly steady hand toward her. He pulled her up gently. It felt like a miracle until she locked eyes with his notorious face. That face meant nothing but trouble. Convinced he was playing games, she fell to her knees, begging for mercy. She bolted without looking back. Watching her disappear, Logan realized a vibe shift wouldn't fix this overnight. You can't undo years of acting like a literal psychopath in just one morning. Outside his father's study, Logan's mask returned. It had been over 20 years since he'd seen the man. The room was freezing. Patrick McLean, the powerhouse patriarch, stared him down with zero warmth. He had zero respect for his failure of a son. Undeterred, Logan requested permission for grueling isolated training. He wanted the mountain estate. Logan still held every battle-hardened memory from his previous life. He possessed elite knowledge, but his current physique was a lazy, unconditioned mess of a body. He needed capital to flip their fortunes, and raw power was the only way to get it. He had 90 days before that girl appeared. Patrick scoffed, instantly suspicious of his son's motives. Running away because Ronian crushed you, Patrick barked. Logan shook his head, admitting his blatant weakness. He confessed to wasting his potential, but Patrick had heard these empty promises 1,000 times before. He shut him down, claiming effort wasn't the issue. Logan, however, saw this rejection coming. Logan owned up to his toxic attitude, swearing he was locked in on becoming a new man. His father's trust was dead. He ordered Logan out, a direct consequence of years of being a brat. Logan didn't budge. He looked his father in the eye, admitting his past was pure immaturity. This training was his path to redemption. Even the coldest father couldn't completely write off his kid. Patrick finally sighed, giving in. One last chance, he growled. Don't waste it. He questioned if 90 days was enough to bridge the gap with Ronian. Logan didn't blink. This wasn't about Ronian, it was about conquering his own failures. As Logan exited, Patrick felt a shift. A flicker of respect ignited within the old man. Logan felt it even without a single word spoken. The grind was finally paying off. Logan vanished into the mountains, isolating himself for 3 grueling months. He wasn't just lifting weights. He was chasing legend. Real warriors could slay dragons with inner power. It was all about the monocore. Day after day, Logan pushed his limits until his muscles screamed. Within 90 days, his core manifested a feat that had previously taken him 40 long years to achieve. Now he could shatter his natural limits. On the final day, Logan stood ready for the ultimate test. Facing a giant oak, Logan prepped his deadliest strike, channeling every ounce of his burning aura. Funneling every ounce of mana into his blade, the slash literally shattered the fabric of reality. As his foe split in two, he realized this was the god-tier strength from his past life's peak. Wielding such hacks at this age came with a price. His fragile frame nearly imploded from the strain. Time to head back and flip the script. The first order of business, a total glow-up. He reeked of filth and grime. But as Logan reached the manor to flex his gains to his father, a knight named Damien blocked his path, barking that only true McLean heirs could enter without an invite. Logan saw how low his rep had fallen. Without missing a beat, he challenged the guard to a one-on-one. He left the entire garrison speechless by absolutely dogging a veteran. This was the fruit of his hellish grind. Combined with elite battle IQ, he made sure nobody would disrespect him again. Meanwhile, in the main study, Logan faced Patrick. His father confessed the display was peak, and finally validated Logan's sudden power spike. Patrick pressed for details on his secret regimen. Logan caught on his dad had been low-key spectating the whole time. A total curveball. He claimed he'd just ditched his ego and embraced a mindset of pure, detached focus. Soon, a dormant energy surged through him. Even if it sounded like cap, this wisdom was forged in his previous life. He'd only unlocked this aura in his 40s back then, right after letting go of his thirst for revenge. Patrick was shook that a simple mental shift caused such growth, admitting Logan was a completely different beast now. Still, Patrick was heated. He couldn't believe Logan's first move after leveling up was to smoke a loyal knight. Logan stood his ground, asking if Patrick heard the real tea from the witnesses. Patrick nodded, confirming he knew. Yet Patrick thought it was overkill. It was mandatory, Logan countered, leaving his father visibly stunned by his resolve. That pawn tried to play a McLean heir. Tolerating such disrespect would rot the house's foundation from the inside out. Logan knew that pecking order is everything. If the chain of command falters, the entire system collapses into chaos. He learned this truth through a decade of blood and steel as a mercenary. With soldiers, you can't be soft. Discipline requires a brutal one-tap lesson. That beatdown was a clear message to every other knight in the castle. Patrick caved, admitting Damien fumbled his duties, and tried to low-key sabotage his own master. Even so, he warned Logan to chill. Logan was floored by how fast his dad moved on from the incident. It was a total 180 from his past life. Noting Logan's shock, Patrick jokingly asked if he'd prefer a beating. Logan declined the offer. Patrick closed the deal, stating he still didn't vibe with Logan's aggressive methods. He strictly forbade any more rogue plays until Logan officially secured his title and rank within the family. Logan gave a respectful nod. Shortly after, the Baron dropped a bombshell. Logan's fiancée was heading their way. Lady Rena was coming. Logan feigned a shocked face, though he was actually 10 steps ahead the whole time. Inside, he was hyped. The moment to secure that massive bag of gold was finally falling into place. Lady Rena Wolves made her grand entrance. The room went dead silent as her ethereal beauty left everyone breathless. Every soldier there was low-key salty at Logan. Rena glided forward, offering the Baron a greeting full of royal poise. She played the part perfectly, inquiring about his health. Even Patrick found himself momentarily dazed by her glow-up. He praised how she'd blossomed since their last meeting. Nearby, Rick watched the scene unfold with deep fascination. He was mesmerized by her aura, but Logan, he looked completely unbothered, like he was watching paint dry. Rena pulled out a scroll from the counter father and began reciting the official message to the room. It was a standard snooze-fest letter for the Baron. For the next 30 minutes, the vibes were purely monotonous. Even the knights were fighting for their lives to stay awake, until the ending hit like a freight train. Because of reasons, the engagement was being nuked. Logan processed the breakup with cold, calculated precision. He saw right through the cap. The Wolves expected Patrick to evolve into a legendary aura-wielding titan by now. Instead, he'd been hard stuck at knight rank for decades, while Logan was famously known as a total basement dweller. Partnering with the McLeans was a bad investment now. The Wolves were cutting ties to protect their own clout. Patrick's blood boiled. Dissolving a blood oath with such weak excuses was a straight-up declaration of disrespect. He knew the Wolves were trying to clown his entire house. Rena quickly tried to spin the narrative, though. She claimed she volunteered to deliver the news personally, just to ensure there were no misunderstandings between the families. She sought closure in person, weaving tales of her childhood year spent within the McLean walls. She spoke of sun-drenched days and idyllic landscapes, reminiscing about the golden moments shared with Logan. These treasures were hard to abandon, but she was shackled by her bloodline's ironclad commands. Her only remaining move was to offer a personal apology to both Logan and Patrick. The onlookers whispered of her inner beauty, but Logan, Mary, and Patrick remained stone cold. Mary cut through the act bluntly, demanding the cold truth behind this broken engagement. She pressed for details on these unavoidable excuses, while Logan watched his hostile stepmother closely. As Ronan's birth mother, she'd always treated Logan as a direct threat to the family legacy. Her interference surprised him, but pride was on the line. Rena simply deflected, dodging the inquiry. She claimed ignorance, insisting she was just a political pawn whose father kept her in the dark. Mary's temper flared, realizing Rena was severing ties without a shred of valid justification. Rena was truly petrified. Sweat streaked her makeup as she offered 3 million gold pieces in a desperate bid for compensation. Financial manager Dwayne Filsner nearly suffered a cardiac arrest at the mention of such wealth. Logan was secretly ecstatic, but Patrick's fury erupted at the audacity of such a transactional insult. A Wolfhouse knight instantly shielded the princess, pleading for Lord Patrick to restrain his wrath. Patrick sized him up, acknowledging the young warrior's impressive rank, despite his junior age. He mused that, perhaps maiming the Wolf clan's rising star would balance the scales of dishonor. The knight countered, stating Lord Chiron respected the McLeans too much to ever target a princess. Rena insisted she wasn't buying their pride, but offering a peace treaty to preserve their bond. Patrick gnashed his teeth, realizing that pushing further would only shatter his own noble reputation. This was precisely why Chiron had dispatched these youngsters to handle the fallout. Patrick declared that House McLean protected all guests, yet he flatly rejected their one-sided handout. He demanded a single price. Princess Rena must offer a sincere, personal apology to Logan himself. Patrick made it clear that no other form of restitution would suffice at that moment. Logan stepped forward, the center of the storm, announcing he had his own request. Internally, Logan screamed that they needed the cash. Letting them walk away for free was madness. 3 million gold represented the entire annual operating budget for the House of McLean. Half their wealth flowed from his stepmother's lineage. Without it, they faced immediate financial ruin. Honor to Logan, it seemed like everyone in the room had completely lost their sanity. Logan urged his father to accept the terms, igniting Patrick's explosive temper once again. Patrick barked, asking if Logan wanted him to betray his word. Logan felt the father's crushing weight. Despite lacking aura, Patrick was a high-ranking knight, yet he was still a small kingdom fish. If he couldn't navigate this crisis, he would never transcend his current limitations. Patrick insisted they weren't desperate enough to sell their souls. Logan could only let out a sigh. "We are exactly that," poor Logan countered, revealing their 3 million gold debt to the bank. With interest alone hitting 150,000 gold, they were barely surviving on Kiros's charity. They were the kingdom's premier beggars, already owing over 2 million gold to the crown itself. Settling for a mere apology would brand them as cowards who had bowed before the wolves. Rena tried to play peacemaker, claiming her clan respected the noble honor of House McLean. Logan snapped back, asking if she truly considered this one-sided betrayal to be rational. A dark memory from his previous life surged forth. He once believed her grief was genuine. That illusion had shattered in a single night. He recalled being alone with her for one goodbye. Believing his noble life was over, Logan had begged her to flee with him into the night. Her response, a knife thrown straight at his face, forcing him to draw steel to survive. Rena shredded her own dress, screaming that a loser like him never deserved her hand. She spat insults, told him to stay in his lane, and mocked his sword after he lost to a brat. Thunder boomed as she shrieked, framing Logan for an assault with his blade already unsheathed. The deception worked flawlessly. Logan realized he'd already been the scapegoat for countless other sins. Even his bloodkin turned their backs. House McLean was ultimately forced to bow and beg forgiveness. Rena's scheme drained their coffers, and from that day, Logan's trust in women was permanently shattered. He viewed her as absolute trash, and swore she wouldn't escape justice this time around. Reliving those memories, Logan shifted gears. Rebuilding his name slowly was no longer the goal. The duel with Damien was a wake-up call. The army didn't care, and toxic rumors were spiraling. You can't save a house by pleasing peons. With 9 months left, his good name was irrelevant. Survival was everything. Logan buried his ego and demanded the Wolves clan pay up in full. Defying his bloodline left Rena stunned. Patrick erupted, roaring at Logan for his sheer audacity. Coldly, Logan stated that hollow words meant nothing, leaving his father absolutely speechless with shock. Breath is cheap, and honor built on mere words is as weightless as the wind. Rena scrambled to fix the mess, claiming the Wolf clan would respect whatever the Baron chose. She put the ball in Patrick's court. Logan saw the cap. She was just shielding her father's ego. She was shaking at the thought of losing 3 million gold. Patrick stared her down and spoke. As McLean's leader, he would settle for nothing less than a genuine apology from the Wolves. But Logan would be the final judge of their sincerity. Mary was absolutely livid at the decision. Patrick cautioned his son, trading honor for gold was a dangerous path that could ruin them forever. Logan didn't blink. Since his life was sabotaged, he snatched that compensation without hesitation. The move stunned Mary and crushed Rena. Disappointed, Patrick sighed, thinking Logan had actually grown. Instead, he saw a monster. He cursed himself for failing to instill true honor into his son. Logan stayed silent, but internally, he knew this sacrifice was the only way to save his bloodline. Resting with 3 million gold secured, Logan's peace was suddenly shattered by a sharp knock. Expecting Rick, he lazily called out for the visitor to enter his chambers. Instead, Dwayne, the estate's money man, walked in. Logan's alarms immediately started blaring. What was this snake planning? Meanwhile, Dwayne's mind was racing with a desperate, complex scheme. As the treasurer, he had been drowning while trying to manage a rapidly vanishing budget. He was caught between aggressive soldiers wanting gear and starving servants just trying to stay alive. To keep them afloat, Dwayne spent every waking hour begging the higher-ups for a single coin. Sometimes he wondered if his real title was financial advisor or simply the king of beggars. If this wasn't his home, he would have quit this nightmare years ago without looking back. But now, the game had changed. Those 3 million gold coins meant years of actual peace. Only one thing stood between him and that fortune, that total idiot Logan. Wearing a fake smile, Dwayne claimed he just wanted to congratulate the young master's performance. He gushed about how Logan's steel resolve proved he was finally the heir they always needed. He assumed his brown-nosing was working wonders on a kid who had never heard a compliment. Stealing the cash should be easy, but Logan's expression remained icy as Dwayne rambled on. He described the 3 million gold as a miracle rainfall in the middle of a brutal drought. Logan's genius move had saved the estate, yet the boy just sat there with a stone face. He bluntly stated he didn't care about the family's relief that gold was his, and his alone. Dwayne's heart plummeted. He realized Logan had zero intention of sharing even a single copper coin. He bit his tongue. After 20 years of being a doormat, eating dirt was his specialty. Today was no different. Suddenly, the man actually began to weep right there. That unexpected reaction stunned Logan. He frowned, asking if the family's finances were truly that pathetic. Dwayne dropped a bombshell. Logan didn't realize House McLean was drowning in 3 million gold of debt. He tried to explain that the interest alone was a staggering 150,000 gold annually. But Logan cut him off, finishing the sentence himself. Dwayne froze in shock. How did he already know? Logan shrugged, claiming the harvest income should easily cover those interest payments without any issues. Dwayne grew desperate, arguing that the sheer cost of maintaining the barony was absolutely astronomical. The family was constantly redlining their budget. He begged that even a small injection of cash could save them. Logan shut him down again, clearly done with the conversation. Confused, Dwayne asked why he wouldn't help, especially since Logan had just risked everything to stand up to the Baron for the family's sake. Logan agreed, but clarified the money was for the family's future, not the Baron's immediate fires. He was playing the long game. Dwayne fumed internally, convinced the young master was talking nonsense. He just wanted the cash handed over. Logan calmly asked if paying the debt would actually change their fate. Dwayne argued that a bigger budget would buy them a few years of breathing room. Logan pressed harder. What happens then? They would just spiral right back into the same debt trap. McLean had 0 exports to sell. It was a death loop, and Logan intended to shatter it himself. He needed that capital for his master plan. Dwayne was floored, wondering if this was even the same kid. The careless brat he once knew was gone. Suddenly, Logan leaned in with a massive favor to ask. If Dwayne cooperated, Logan promised to kick back a portion of the funds for the estate's expenses. Dwayne was all ears. Logan's request was simple. He needed to recruit an army of mercenaries. Later, Logan met Rick while packing. Rick snapped, demanding to know where the hell he was going now. He'd barely finished his solo training. Logan casually replied that he was heading out to secure the bag. Rick pointed out his current pile of gold, but Logan insisted it wasn't nearly enough for what's coming. The patriarch would never let him leave during this tension. But Logan wasn't planning on asking for permission. He was ghosting. Rick was stunned, but Logan knew he had to build his own power outside the walls. If he didn't flip his reputation now, he'd be stuck forever. Luckily, he had a secret advantage. He knew exactly what chaos was brewing beyond the estate, thanks to the memories of his past life. His first target was already locked in. Rick tried to talk sense into him, calling the move pure madness. Becoming a fugitive now would ruin everything. Logan's patience with Rick's nagging was wearing thin. Rick challenged him to step over his body if he wanted to leave. He wasn't letting him go easily. Logan almost did exactly that. He reassured Rick that everything was under control, and to just relax. He'd leave a letter for his father so Rick wouldn't take the fall. Rick asked what it said. Logan just gave a cryptic smirk. Once he vanished into the night, Rick finally delivered the message. The patriarch looked ready to explode. The letter started with a ridiculously long and formal greeting. It claimed he was heartbroken over the engagement and needed a vacation. It was a total lie. Signed by Logan McLean. Rick could only weep, praying for the young master to return in one piece. The history of House McLean was then revealed. 2 centuries ago, they were absolute apex predators. Their territory dominated the entire Southwest, and they were respected as the undisputed rulers of the region. They were kings of Grandia. But then came Patrick McLean, and 3 generations of total incompetence. That failure dragged the family name through the dirt, stripping their titles and shrinking their borders. Their legendary grain plains were seized by vassals, leaving the McLeans with nothing but scraps. They were essentially exiled to the dry, barren wasteland near the southern mountain range. It was a total downfall. From that moment on, living in poverty became the family's new reality. They had no exports, and unlike other mountain lords, they didn't even have copper mines to exploit. Logan realized that even winning the upcoming war wouldn't help. They'd still be begging for scraps. House McLean was a sinking ship. Without his intervention, their legendary name would simply vanish forever. To shatter this infinite loop, Logan required a mountain of capital, something his measly 3 million gold couldn't touch. He tracked down the one man capable of shifting the scales as he ventured into Cairo Grandia's trade heart. The air thrummed with chaotic energy as street vendors peddled enchanted trinkets and exotic delicacies. Navigating the neon-bright streets, Logan felt the stinging reality of how pathetic his own McLean territory truly was. Memories guided him. His target was a local legend-to-be who once haunted these very alleys. That man was the future tycoon Philip Claude, the Golden Beetle and mastermind within the Ares Empire. Ares was a meritocratic powerhouse where raw skill dictated destiny, crushing all barriers of age and birthright. Even outsiders could seize ultimate glory there, and Philip Claude was the living blueprint for that dream. Born in Grandia, he'd eventually reign as the empire's wealthiest mogul and the continent's premier arms dealer. History labeled him a traitor, but the hidden truth behind his motives was far more noble. Philip quietly funneled his massive fortune back home to fuel the miracle of Grandia's independence. Scouting the crowds, Logan's eyes locked onto a disheveled youth standing motionless amidst the swirling sea of people. This was him, a boy who had just been fleeced of everything, staring into a dark, uncertain abyss. With his pockets emptied by a ruthless Khan, the boy looked utterly lost, wondering if he'd even survive. Logan knew the tales of Philip's failure, but seeing this broken version of a future tycoon was devastating. As the boy teetered on the edge of total despair, Logan stepped out from the shadows to intervene. He called Philip's name, earning a defensive glare. Logan's crimson eyes and scarred gear screamed danger to him. Let's talk, Logan offered calmly, but Philip's survival instincts were screaming at him to stay guarded. Suspecting a trap, Philip questioned how a stranger knew his identity, searching Logan for any hidden motive. He saw greed flickering in Logan's gaze, the same predatory look common in Cairo's dark underworld. Thinking Logan was just another mercenary vulture, Philip spiraled into a panic, shouting about his unpaid debts. He begged for 3 more days, swearing his last assets were being liquidated to settle his mounting accounts. Logan stood firm, clarifying he wasn't there to squeeze the boy for his last remaining copper. But Philip, cornered and desperate, kept barking threats, desperate to drive away what he thought was another thug. Logan remained unshaken, dropping a bombshell that silenced the chaos. He wasn't here for money, but to invest. The word invest stopped Philip mid-breath. He looked at Logan, his mind racing to find the catch. He assumed Logan was either a delusional madman or a cruel joker betting on a complete failure. Yet a tiny spark of hope flickered. He skeptically asked Logan exactly how much he planned to offer. Logan flipped the script, asking Philip to name his price for a fresh start and a clean slate. Philip scrutinized Logan's travel-worn appearance, trying to reconcile the noble's crest with his dusty, battle-hardened armor. Losing his patience, Philip lashed out, convinced this was just another elaborate scam to mock his misery. He hurled insults, calling Logan a fraud and mocking the irony of a McLean noble acting wealthy. He recognized the McLean crest and scoffed at the idea of a backwater noble having any gold. To a city boy like Philip, the McLeans were just glorified beggars clinging to a dying name. He laughed in Logan's face, warning that faking a noble's investment was a crime punishable by death. Pick a better target, he sneered, certain Logan was wasting his time trying to squeeze blood from stone. Logan watched with inward admiration. Even at his lowest, Philip's analytical mind was still razor-sharp. As Philip continued his public meltdown, Logan realized he needed a more forceful way to prove his legitimacy. Without a word, Logan unleashed his raw aura, the sheer pressure of his power instantly silencing the street. Philip froze. A Force user this young would never waste their potential on a petty street con. Humbled and shaken, the boy apologized, finally, asking what Logan truly desired from a broken man. Logan's terms were simple, lifelong loyalty in exchange for a complete debt wipe and a royal salary. Still wary, Philip questioned if the McLeans actually possessed the fortune required to back such bold claims. Logan didn't flinch, offering to cover the entire debt, plus another 300,000 gold on top. He then revealed the cold, hard cash. In that instant, Logan looked like a literal angel from heaven. The pact was brutally simple. If Philip ever intentionally harmed his boss, he would suffer agony so intense it felt soul-shattering. The witch cackled, explaining his only exits were awakening as a high-tier knight, hiring a 4-circle mage, or paying a massive ransom. Or he could simply pay several hundred times the contract's value to shatter the curse. Philip stood there utterly speechless again. She casually waved them off, inviting them back whenever. Philip felt completely played, wondering if he had just signed his life away. He realized a single page of that magic parchment was worth 30 slaves. He had literally paid a fortune to make Logan his savior. Logan kept it real, stating trust was non-existent between them. Investing a fortune required a guarantee. Build trust, and the contract vanishes. He extended his hand. Philip knew the contract was a chaotic mess with 0 deadlines, but he had no other choice. He shook Logan's hand. When he asked for their first objective, Logan dropped a bombshell. They were going to buy monster meat. Philip instantly called him a total psychopath. Logan expected the hate. Everyone knew monster flesh was nothing but toxic, lethal garbage. Burning the carcasses was common sense. But Logan knew the future. In a few years, a massive shift would change the world. Once word leaked that common ingredients could neutralize monster, blood-starving regions began feasting on these beasts. The famine finally ended. After people started eating Kellogg meat, even those suffering from permanent sterility saw miraculous recoveries. The news spread like wildfire. A year later, the Royal Magic Tower verified the miracle. The Kellogg monsters were hunted into total extinction shortly after that. Knowing this flesh boosted fertility, Logan calculated a massive payday, at least 3 million gold coins, perhaps even more. Walking beside this apparent madman, Philip stared at Logan with pure disappointment. He seriously considered just making a run for it. Inside a local tavern, they sat down to plot their next move. Logan casually mentioned he wanted 1 million gold worth of meat. Philip nearly short-circuited. He was convinced Logan had lost his damn mind. But Logan remained stone-cold, confident about the profits. Philip pushed back hard, demanding to know if Logan was actually serious. Logan didn't blink, confirming he was all in. Philip then asked about the market price for Kellogg meat. Logan explained it was essentially worthless trash that most people just burned. Sending a level 0 worker to fetch the bodies would only cost 200 gold in kingdom transport fees per unit. However, transporting the Kellogg's in bulk would cause the overhead to plummet. Philip was stunned. Logan had actually crunched the numbers. He admitted the math checked out. He asked if Logan planned to hire a mercenary guild to hunt down every beast in the kingdom. Logan nodded, but Philip immediately shut it down. That approach was all wrong. If the meat was trash, call a merchant guild instead. Merchants would haul anything for the right price. Even if it was literal garbage, they would deliver it with a smile. Philip bragged that once the order was placed, they would deliver every ounce of butchered Kellogg meat straight to their door. Logan was impressed. His investment was already paying off. He jokingly called Philip an adorable punk, though he remained somewhat suspicious. Philip brushed off the comment, telling Logan to quit worrying about the money. From now on, the logistics were his problem. After all, his own survival was tied to Logan's success. Logan then handed over a massive shopping list of war materials. Looking at the ironwood and springs, Philip asked if they were opening a toy factory. Logan smirked, promising something much better. In reality, Logan was stockpiling raw materials for devastating weapons of war. He remembered these tools from his bloody past life. During the invasion of Grandia, these exact weapons allowed a single common soldier to hold back a legendary knight. He had already sent Dwayne to recruit mercenaries. Handing them, these advanced weapons would ensure total dominance in the coming regional war. But first, Logan needed two vital assets, a master craftsman to build the weapons, and an instructor to train the men. 2 days later, Logan arrived in Harun, the notorious city of mercenaries. He stood face to face with Kaisalan, a formidable rank, a mercenary. Logan was told to quit stressing over funds. From here on, his benefactor would bankroll everything. Logan then handed over a shopping list. It was weird stuff, ironwood springs, and heavy-duty glue. Philip looked at the list, totally confused. What's the plan, Logan? Are we building toys now? Logan just smirked. He had a deadlier vision. These weren't toys, they were the components of revolution. He was secretly prepping for total war. He remembered these specific tools from the Grandia invasion. With this gear, the power balance would shift. Even a basic soldier could crush a high-tier knight. Meanwhile, Dwayne was already hunting for talent. The mission, to recruit the most ruthless mercenaries available. Arming those killers with these secret weapons would guarantee total dominance in the coming regional conflict. But first, he needed two specialists, a master craftsman for production and a beastly combat instructor. 2 days later, Logan stepped into Harun, the city of swords. He sought out a legend named Kaisalan. Kaisalan wasn't just anyone. He was a rank A powerhouse, and Logan needed his lethal skills. Logan tries to recruit Kaisalan as a mentor, but the veteran insists he has no experience. Logan brushes it off, promising the job as a cakewalk training rank C mercenaries. Still hesitant, Kaisalan claims he's only ever guided a few kids in his life. He suggests hiring pros, but Logan isn't falling for the humble routine. Logan remembers the truth. Kaisalan is a master of every blade, and a beastly rider. More importantly, he was a legendary coach whose past squad became an unstoppable force. Logan drops 4,000 gold. Denied. He ups it to 6,000. Still nothing. 7,000 nope. At 8,000 gold, Kaisalan's morals finally blink. That was the breaking point. Kaisalan folds, instantly thanking Logan for the opportunity. Logan reveals his identity as the McLean heir, wondering if the man is curious. Kaisalan doesn't care about the why. He's only here for the paycheck. Suddenly, they witness a man whipping workers in the street screaming death threats. Kaisalan explains that Harun is a hellscape built on mercenary blood and shackles. In this dark market, Logan decides it's time to acquire a special asset. A shady merchant targets Logan, thinking he's just a rich kid, with no street smarts. The moment he recognizes Kaisalan, the merchant's face turns ghost white with terror. Logan smirks. Hiring this guy was already worth every coin. They reach a fortress-like shop. This place is crawling with guards. An old merchant greets Logan, sensing his determination. Logan skips the small talk. He's here to buy a dwarf no cap. The merchant shows off rare elves, first treating them like luxury commodities. Logan ignores the bait and points directly at the chained dwarf in the back. The merchant hypes him up, claiming this dwarf is an expert-level craftsman. Logan is floored. He expected talent, but an expert title is a total jackpot. He knew dwarves were gifted, but this was far beyond his wildest expectations. The price, a staggering 200,000 gold. Logan just gives him a cold stare. He asks if he looks like a clown, and the merchant nearly wets himself. The price drops 50,000 instantly. Kaisalan is stunned by Logan's savage negotiation. The dwarf calls Logan ruthless, but for Logan, this is just standard business. He tells the dwarf he's moving to McLean territory to start his new life. The dwarf doesn't resist. Logan knows slave dwarves usually lose their creative spark. He offers a deal 20 years of peak work for total freedom. 20 years is a blink to a dwarf. The promise lights a fire in his eyes. Overwhelmed with hope, the craftsman tries to thank his new master right there. Suddenly another slave bolts, but gets crushed by a soldier, and Logan recognizes the face. Blue hair, chilling eyes. Logan's heart stops. It's the noble slayer. He can't believe he found the legendary monster in a place like this. In the future, this man escaped and became a night-slaughtering aura user. The timeline is perfect. Right now, this future beast is still just a helpless slave. If Logan saves him now, he gains the ultimate weapon for his future army. He's a psychopath, sure, but Logan will just lock him up if things get spicy. As the whip descends, Logan's blade flashes out to parry the strike effortlessly. The traitor sees Logan's noble crest, and his ego vanishes instantly. He starts groveling, claiming the trash just needed a little discipline. Logan points to the two children, demanding to buy them both on the spot. Sensing a payday, the merchant quotes 10,000 gold per head for the pair. Logan sized up the market. 300 gold for a prime slave, what a joke. He threw down a counter, 500 per child. The merchant stuttered, but Logan's icy glare silenced him. One look told him Logan knew the game. Pure panic set in and the deal was struck. Grumbling about the brat's constant trouble, Castellan hauled the wounded boy. He was floored. The kid's healing speed was insane. Logan shrugged it off as nothing. In reality, he'd been secretly pumping life force into the boy to mend his broken body. Suddenly, Victor lunged, but Logan was light years ahead. He caught the boy's throat mid-air. Brave. Or just suicidal. Choose your fights better, kid. Logan promised absolute protection for him and his sister as long as they didn't cross him. Try that again, and you both die. He tossed the boy aside like trash, casually mentioning he'd turn him into a knight. Victor froze. A knight, Logan nodded. Honorary nobility kid. The real deal. It was the ultimate escape for both siblings. Victor knelt, his loyalty cemented instantly. Logan smirked. His theory was right. The sister was the leash for this beast of a boy. Logan declared that their training would begin the second they returned home. He then summoned the dwarf Heir and told him to step closer. He explained the terms of an ironclad magical contract. If Heir served him for the next 20 years, Logan would personally escort him back to the mountains. Heir was stunned. He couldn't believe this was real. Logan didn't blink. Words were just wind, easily forgotten. A contract was the only thing that carried weight in this world. Any issues, Logan challenged. He wanted to see if the dwarf truly had the spark left to fight for his freedom. Tears welled in Heir's eyes as he shouted his answer. He was in completely and utterly no matter what, Logan asked. Gratitude poured out of the dwarf like a flood. He couldn't wrap his head around such a life-changing mercy. Watching the dwarf crumble, Logan suppressed a grin. A simple paper contract for legendary motivation. This was the heist of the century. This trip was a massive W. He had his supplies for the clan war and the legendary noble slayer in his pocket. Every piece of the puzzle was falling into place. Everything was finally progressing exactly as he'd envisioned. But while he was winning back at the McLean estate, his reputation was sinking into the gutter. Rumors about the mad young master were spreading like wildfire. Poor Rick was losing his mind trying to fix the mess. The man was drowning in confusion, desperately wondering if Logan had finally gone off the deep end for good. When Logan finally returned home, Rick looked like he'd just seen a ghost, a very annoying, expensive ghost. Logan tossed a casual greeting. Rick practically short-circuited. "How's it going? Are you even serious right now?" Shaking with stress, Rick demanded an explanation. The rumors were insane. Logan was being called a degenerate monster. The gossip claimed Logan was a degenerate monster who'd blown 150,000 gold on monster meat. Rick explained the chaos. A guy named Philip had been rounding up merchants buying meat in Logan's name. And it wasn't just meat. People were buzzing about Logan's failed engagement and how he'd allegedly robbed his ex-fiancée. Philip, thinking Logan was just a rich lunatic, leaned into the madness. He wasn't just buying. He was starting a circus. He fanned the flames of the meat-eating monster rumors to drive the purchase prices through the floor. He offered 1 gold per kilo for what everyone considered trash. No merchant in their right mind would say no. He told them to bring every scrap of monster flesh they could find. Philip's aggressive hustle was paying off big time. The word reached every dark corner of the city. The thieves' quarter was buzzing with the news of the crazy McLean heir. When Logan heard the full story, he didn't get angry. He actually praised Philip for doing a flawless job. Rick was speechless. How could he laugh when his name was being dragged through the mud like this? Logan just pointed to his travel companions. Their shell-shocked faces told the whole story of the rumors they'd heard. "Relax," Rick Logan said calmly. To him, this was all just part of the grand plan. It would all blow over soon. But Rick wasn't buying it. The next storm was already waiting. The patriarch was in his office, and he was livid. Inside, the tension was suffocating. Patrick glared at his son. "Enjoyed your little vacation away from home." Logan didn't flinch. It was worth every second. Patrick sighed. He'd heard all about Logan's reckless spending and bizarre antics. "At least you didn't come back empty-handed," Patrick muttered. But the rumors were still a massive stain on the family. Logan fired back, calling the gossip baseless trash. He didn't regret a single move he'd made on that trip. That's when his stepmother slithered in. She wasted no time reminding Patrick that she'd warned him about Logan's wild behavior. He stood firm, owning every choice without a shred of remorse. Suddenly his stepmother snapped, reminding Patrick she'd already called it. Logan was oblivious to his status, failing to realize his antics were dragging the family name through the dirt. Cutting her off mid-sentence, Logan scoffed, claiming she was blowing his actions way out of proportion. He intended to use the broken engagement funds however he pleased. Mary pressed Patrick, demanding he acknowledge this. Would he really defend Logan after all this? That was the final straw, Patrick snapped, roaring for silence. He coldly ordered her out, needing a private word with his son. Once the heavy doors clicked shut, Patrick issued a chilling warning. This was Logan's absolute last strike. Facing his father's boiling rage, dread finally crept up Logan's spine. Patrick demanded to know what was actually going through his head. It was time for the brutal truth. Logan realized his father wasn't going to turn a blind eye. Logan countered that even with an explanation, Patrick wouldn't get it. His father fired back instantly. Or is it that you don't want to be understood? He asked if Logan had any clue about the rumors that he's a violent, money-obsessed lunatic who's completely lost his mind. How long was he expected to clean up his messes? What happens when his protection finally runs out? He pleaded for a heads up so he could at least say he did everything in his power. For the sake of Logan's late mother. Logan froze. His father had never once brought her up before. Not even in his past life when he was exiled. This glimpse of hope meant Patrick hadn't totally abandoned him. Logan seized the moment and asked for 1 year. He swore that within those 12 months, he would justify every single one of his actions. He begged for this one last shot at redemption. Later, Patrick sat alone, ruminating on their talk. He couldn't help but admit to himself how bizarre it was to negotiate with his own flesh and blood like a complete stranger. If Logan failed, a brutal choice awaited. After all, before he was a loving father, he was the Lord of House McLean. Staring at his late wife's portrait, he whispered a soft apology. He was lost regarding their son's behavior. He confessed that despite his promise to protect Logan, everything had crumbled due to his own failure. Later, as Logan paced through the castle halls, he stumbled upon his little brother. Logan froze in shock. Ronian had already awakened his force. Ronian noted his quick realization, boasting that he'd caught up sooner than expected. Logan was truly elated, achieving such a feat at only 14. In the previous timeline, Ronian's power didn't awaken until the war, but now it happened way ahead of schedule. Ronian credited Logan for the breakthrough, seeing his brother's confusion. He explained that the knights tried to block him when Logan returned. In that desperate moment, his force surged, and he actually flattened the knights just to reach Logan. Logan laughed with pride, commending his brother's growth. Once Ronian's power stabilized, the divine sword secrets would make him a god compared to his past self. Later, at a southern cabin, Logan linked up with Dwayne, who confirmed all 35 C-rank mercenaries had finally shown up. These mercs were livid. They'd been waiting 10 days, yet Logan hadn't even graced them with his presence. They grumbled that some low-rent baron wouldn't dare mess with a mercenary guild without a death wish. Others whispered about the dark rumors surrounding Logan, realizing the young lord was far from a saint. They clowned his look, mocking him for wearing armor and carrying a sword like a total wannabe. Logan knew that if he didn't humble these professional thugs right now, he'd never keep them in line. He confronted a mercenary, asking if he found his armor so hilarious. Or maybe his sword was the joke, the merc stammered, shocked that Logan had even overheard him. Logan laughed in his face, stating that trash talk only works if you actually have the skills. He labeled him a bottom-tier merc, and demanded to know what imaginary talent fueled his massive ego. "Did I hurt your feelings?" he teased, knowing even weaklings have some pride. He dared the man to step up. Logan issued a challenge, land just one hit on him, and he could walk away with a full year's pay instantly. Logan staked his noble honor on it, using everyone there as a witness. Grinning, the merc stepped forward, warning Logan there was no backing out. The mercenary loomed over Logan, flexing his muscles to terrify the boy. But the crowd wasn't scared. They were impressed, whispering that he was easily B rank. Rumors swirled that this mission would push him to the next level. Logan just smirked, seeing right through the man's hollow bravado. "Take your best shot," the brute sneered. Logan warned him he'd live to regret it, but the giant simply brushed him off. Bragging about his years of experience, he mockingly asked if the kid needed a head start or a handicap. Logan concentrated his force, blasting a punch straight into the man's face. The sheer power left everyone speechless. It was over in a heartbeat. The mercenary hit the dirt, teeth scattering across the floor like broken glass. The other sellswords froze in shock. Logan casually rolled his shoulder, completely unfazed. "Anyone else want to talk trash?" he asked. They stood paralyzed, unable to fathom a teenager mastering force already. It was straight-up logic-defying. Watching from the sidelines, Kaisalon knew Logan was special, but this level of power, insane. Logan announced that the disrespect ended now. With cold authority, he finally introduced himself as Logan McLean. As their employer, he addressed the elephant in the room. Why dump so much gold on a bunch of mercenaries? His goal was wild, turning them into crossbow knights. Even Dwayne and Kaisalon were caught completely off guard. The men shared confused glances. One grumbled that they'd just be sitting ducks while trying to reload. Kaisalon whispered that crossbows were useless for knights. Logan just nodded, admitting he was well aware of the flaws. Baffled, Kaisalon asked why he'd bother. Logan started breaking down the strategic situation. While deadlier than standard bows reloading, a crossbow on a galloping horse took way too long for rookies. Even with spares, they'd be out of ammo in seconds. Logan ordered Kaisalon to focus on basic training first. Though Logan seemed to be playing house with his money, he promised the true purpose would be revealed soon. He claimed this crossbow unit would be House McLean's ultimate weapon, and not just for the next battle. Their future reached far beyond some bandit skirmish. Kaisalon didn't get it, but he obeyed his master's command. Days later, Logan sat in silence, analyzing a list. Out of the 350 recruits they had gathered, only 312 cleared the initial trials. For Logan's purposes, that number was more than enough. A sudden knock broke his concentration. It was Heir, curious about the strange blueprints Logan was holding. Logan revealed it was a new crossbow design for the dwarf to forge, though he admitted it looked unrefined. It was basic for a pro, but Logan knew its power. He'd wielded this very weapon for decades before. He sketched every detail from memory. With Heir's legendary skills, Logan was sure the dwarf could make it real. Examining the plans, Heir noted that the crossbow would require a specialized cartridge to function. A rear-mounted magazine for auto-reloading and triple-shot bursts, he barked, demanding to know the source of the idea. Who dreamed up this madness? When Logan claimed it, the dwarf's face twisted in pure annoyance. Grudgingly, Heir admitted the genius behind it, but he warned that the tension would snap the string instantly. Plus, slapping a clunky wooden box on the stock would make the weapon impossible for any soldier to handle. He demanded solutions, but Logan just shrugged. That's your job, Heir. Figure it out. The dwarf fumed, but Logan quickly laughed it off. He agreed the bolts needed to be significantly smaller. To slim down the design, he swapped to a single-shot model using preloaded swappable cartridges. He called them magazines for simplicity. The concept left the veteran craftsman absolutely stunned. He argued that even the best archer couldn't fire twice in under 60 seconds with a standard crossbow. This tech felt like it was from another century. Logan smirked. He knew exactly where it came from. It was literally a weapon from the future. Heir noted that most people thought this was impossible. They thought it was just glue and strings, but to a master, this was a legendary challenge. He accepted the task. But when Logan pushed for a deadline, the dwarf's temper flared again. He yelled about rushing a prototype he'd never seen, but Logan just called it another tool of war. Man-made Logan teased. Heir was dying to know the inventor's name, but Logan just threw down the gauntlet. He told the dwarf to quit if he was scared. That was all it took to spark Heir's pride. He vowed to craft a masterpiece in just 30 days. Watching the fire in his eyes, Logan felt triumphant. Manipulating a dwarf's pride worked like a charm. Meanwhile, at the training grounds, Victor was sweating through laps. Logan barked that his pace was dropping, demanding more. Victor gritted his teeth and surged forward. Logan mused on the past few days where he'd prioritized Victor's recovery, with heavy meals and deep sleep. The change was staggering. Finally, Logan granted a break, and Victor's sister instantly rushed to his side. Logan grinned, realizing his massive win. At 14, despite being smaller than his peers, Victor crushed a 20-kilometer run effortlessly. His talent was lethal, but his grit impressed Logan more. Exhaustion seemed like a foreign concept to him. Clearly, he wasn't born a killer. His sister was his true drive. Snapping out of it, Logan announced that break time was over. He pitched him a blade, declaring that his journey with the sword started right now. He'd learned the Grandia Kingdom's standard style. Moments later, Logan demanded Victor's total focus. The young lord demonstrated his grip tight, as his blade tore through the air with violent precision. Victor looked dead inside. Sleep was his only desire, yet he still braced himself for more. If suffering bought him security, he'd pay up. He began mimicking Logan's every move. His swings were flawless. Watching him, Logan's jaw dropped as Victor matched his form with terrifying accuracy. Every breath and motion was identical. After seeing it once, Victor had mastered the fundamental flow. Logan had to admit it, even Ronian lacked this much raw potential at 14. Logan promised that reaching 1,000 perfect reps would mark his first step toward knighthood. Victor's eyes burned with newfound fire. When asked if he could do it, he didn't hesitate. He eagerly claimed he could. Logan mentioned Rick would handle any training gear he needed, but the boy just shook his head. He didn't want anything for himself. He only asked that his sister be looked after. To Logan, that was the ultimate answer. Victor was a diamond in the rough. Eventually, he'd become House McLean's most dangerous weapon. Between the mercenaries and Heir's engineering, they were building an unstoppable war machine. Still, he kept his expectations in check. The crossbow project could still blow up in their faces. Success wasn't guaranteed. Logan needed a fallback plan in case his people failed to deliver. Later, he marched into his father's office, asking to join the elite knights' training sessions. To his shock, Patrick actually gave him the green light. That night, Captain Hankley gathered the order to introduce their newest and most controversial recruit. Logan was joining the ranks for real. Predictably, the announcement went over like a lead balloon. Hostile whispers filled the air. They thought Logan was turning their sacred duty into a playground. Defeating Dominan hadn't earned their respect. Hankley flashed back to a tense talk with the Patriarch. He'd stood in Patrick's study, arguing fiercely against letting the young lord join the order. He warned that the knights would revolt, but Patrick crushed his protests immediately. He wasn't looking for a favor. He wanted his son to endure hell alongside the rookies. No mercy allowed. Back in the present, Hankley struggled with the reality of training the Lord's kin. A direct order to go easy would have been simpler. Sensing the tension, Logan stepped up. He threw down a gauntlet. If he failed a single drill this week, he'd quit forever. The captain was stunned by his confidence, but he took the bet. Hankley decided to turn the heat up. Next week's training would be 3 times as brutal. Soon, knights were seen sprinting while carrying comrades on their backs. It was absolute madness. Hankley screamed at them to survive. As cavalry, they had to understand the horses' struggle. They needed to feel the crushing weight of iron and blood. The knights finally understood the hell they were in. Most of them cursed Logan's very existence. Betting pools started on when he'd break. Day 1, day 3. They were dead wrong. Logan was a blur of motion tearing through the course at full speed. The entire order was paralyzed with shock. Even the captain couldn't believe his eyes. Making matters worse, a chilling smirk never left Logan's face. Hankley fumed. It wasn't the boy who was lagging. It was the elite knights. Panicked, he halted the drill, calling an immediate 10-minute breather for the gasping men. Approaching Logan, he probed for any sign of weakness after that brutal sprint. What Hankley secretly prayed for was a plea for mercy to end this insanity. Instead, Logan silenced him before he could utter a single word. Too easy, Logan shrugged. Jaw dropped, Hankley stuttered in disbelief. Logan simply called the hellish pace prime warm-up material. He claimed this daily grind would turn anyone into a monster. Then he dropped a bombshell. He was actually hyped for the next round. Nearby veteran knights lay dying in the dirt. Hankley froze. His plan had backfired spectacularly. Logan didn't give a damn. Under the cover of darkness, Logan surveyed the desolate grounds. Total silence. The others had long since crawled back to their beds. Standing solitary, he weighed his motives. This sweat was his ultimate safety net. If his grand schemes crumbled, he'd still be a frontline beast. Besides, forging these brotherhoods now would pay dividends when the real war ignited. But there was more. While meditation forged his force, only raw physical torment could truly temper his vessel. The order was the perfect forge, imagining his core pulsating with power and his muscles defying gravity. Logan unsheathed his blade. A force flash ignited, deadly and precise. He stared at the destruction, awestruck. All this power from a mere 1-star core. Once he hit 2 stars, he'd stand toe-to-toe with legends like his father. Sunrise brought a new trial, Heimar's latest crossbow prototypes. He trashed them instantly. "Is this really your peak?" Heimar Logan asked, his voice dripping with cold disappointment. Single shots were useless. No magazine, no lethality. He ruthlessly reminded the dwarf of the missing link. The mechanics had to be seamless. Heimar erupted in fury, but Logan quickly backpedaled, feigning regret for his stinging words. Heimar spat back, that while Logan had a point, insulting a master's pride was a death wish. Logan's underlying threat was clear. If this was the dwarf's ceiling, their entire future was headed for a casket. That realization pushed Heimar to the brink. Logan tightened the screws, questioning if he'd overestimated a master dwarf. Weeks bled away with 0 results. That's when Logan decided to finally cross the line. He mocked Heimar, claiming he'd flushed his fortune down the drain on a second-rate hack. "Trusting you was my biggest mistake." That snapped it. Heimar roared, demanding 1 final month for redemption. He swore to deliver a masterpiece or die trying. Blind with rage, he pulverized the prototype and stormed out. Logan watched, knowing that spite would be Heimar's greatest fuel. A sinister grin played on Logan's lips. How far could this dwarf push past his limits? 1 month later, Heimar returned to the fields, dragging a mysterious new invention behind him. The beast fired 2 bolts simultaneously. Logan was floored. Heimar admitted it lacked the requested capacity. But it was a one-handed monster with a lightning-fast magazine swap. The reload speed, a mere 2 seconds. It shattered Logan's expectations. Sure, the range was shorter, and the frame smaller than his memories, but for a mounted unit, this was absolute perfection. They were light years ahead of schedule. When Heimar snapped at him to focus, Logan scooped him up like a toddler. He roared praises, hailing the dwarf race as legends. A blushing Heimar scrambled to get down, barking that he wasn't some damn toy to be played with. Setting him down, Logan's gaze sharpened. The atmosphere shifted. Heimar gulped, sensing a heavy request incoming. Logan's eyes turned predatory. "I need 400 of these. In 2 months. No excuses." Logan handed the finished steel to Kazalon's mercs. The second they pulled the triggers, the world went silent. The bolts shrieked across the field in rapid-fire succession. Kazalon inspected the mechanism, his hands trembling. This level of velocity and fire rate in a front-loader was physically impossible. It defied logic. Reality hit. Kazalon visualized 300 riders armed with these, a literal meat grinder on horseback. A cold shiver raced down his spine. "You've created a monster," he whispered to Logan in awe. Logan's dark endgame finally came into focus. He gave a sharp knowing nod. He knew Heimar had walked through fire to build this even with an army of smiths behind him. Logan was floored when Hamar crushed the deadline by 2 months, even cranking out 100 bonus crossbows. Pure dwarven craftsmanship at its finest. For a split second, Logan considered arming his entire military with this elite tech, but the insane production costs made it a pipe dream. Plus, the threat of the design leaking was way too high. He had to gatekeep this power for now. Logan ordered Kaisalon to equip the mercenaries with the new gear instead. Their mission: eradicate every monster lurking outside the borders. Kaisalon called it suicide, but Logan didn't blink. After crunching the numbers, Kaisalon relented, saying it might actually succeed. But might wasn't in Logan's vocabulary. He demanded absolute victory, because if they failed here, their future was toast. The gravity finally hit Kaisalon. These weren't just monster-slaying tools. Logan was forging the lethal instruments of total war. During a brutal night drill, the knights marveled at Logan's god-tier stamina. They joked about where that bottomless energy came from. Was it just top-tier genetics? One soldier noted that if he took after the patriarch even a little bit, he'd be a beast with a blade. The gossip turned to his legendary duel with Dominan until one veteran knight intervened. He warned them against comparing Logan to Patrick. Even before tapping into his force, Logan had tasted defeat against his sibling. Yet surviving this hellish regimen for over 1 month was legendary. A program designed to break his spirit had somehow become the gold standard for the entire order. The grind was straight up soul-crushing, but it beat those trash-tier drills any day. This was real knight business. Surprisingly, even the slackers were getting hyped. The low rankers who used to coast were now totally locked in. Even their synergy with their steeds reached a new level. Captain Hankley realized the only reason he'd gone this hard was because the young master refused to tap out. He never dreamed of results this insane. It felt like Lady Luck herself had finally walked into their camp. Bathed in the silence of his chamber, Logan brooded over his progress, his muscles still screaming from a brutal workout. Deep meditation acted as a catalyst for his inner psyche. This synergy was flawless, and he could feel a surge of raw, tangible power. He had already begun sensing a profound shift in his energy. If this momentum held, he was certain he would eclipse even the nightmare-level beasts from his previous life. But suddenly, the air fractured with an unexpected surge. Logan's mana core swelled violently. Gasping through the chaos of his evolution, his power suddenly spiked into 2-star territory. This was the threshold. He finally possessed the spiritual specs required to unlock the next legendary secret art Iron Cut, the lethal Iron Cut. The mere memory of the first form's sheer carnage sent his pulse into an absolute overdrive. Stage 2 would be a total game-changer. If he mastered it before the front lines, not even an elite high-ranking knight could make him flinch. The following dawn, Kaisalon's crew stumbled right into a pack of snarling goblins. The squad unloaded, turning the monsters into Swiss cheese instantly. One merc marveled at the zero recoil, while another watched his bolt drill through one skull and bury itself in the next. Logan stood back, observing a 100-strong swarm get completely deleted in under 10 seconds. The clunky amateur habits of old-school crossbowmen had officially vanished. Their reload speed was cracked pure mechanical efficiency. Logan knew then that this dangerous trek into the wilds had been a total win. Kaisalon checked in on his mood, and Logan gave a cool, measured nod of approval. Recalling their first messy outing, he couldn't deny their insane glow-up. That was when Kaisalon leaned in, demanding to know the endgame. No mercenary unit in history had ever packed this level of insane heat. He even joked about Logan wanting to clear the entire map, but before a witty comeback could be dropped, a rider thundered in at full speed, bearing an urgent message from Rick. Just yesterday, Viscount Tessran had officially pulled the trigger on House McLean. Inside the war room, Patrick and the High Council stood frozen, staring at the crystal ball as Tessran spat out his ultimatum. The enemy's pathetic excuse, he claimed, that some ancient family grudge justified this impending bloodbath. Patrick was left in a cold, stunned silence. The nobles whispered, baffled by such a weak pretext for total war. Hankley and Marion looked to Patrick, waiting for his next move. Hankley dropped the truth. Tessran's night order easily dwarfed theirs, even with Patrick on the field. The situation was cooked. One desperate lord suggested turtling up in the city and praying for backup. Another proposed talking it out. Patrick snapped. He roared for silence, reminding the room that, since the king's law was dead, Tessran wouldn't risk this without a master plan. Peace was never an option. Diplomacy was dead. Patrick commanded full mobilization, demanding a winning strategy, while refusing to tolerate a single word of dissent. As a heavy dread settled over the room, one noble asked if young Master Logan would be joining the fray. Patrick confirmed it. Marion added that Ronian's power had finally bloomed, making him ready for the battlefield as well. Realizing Logan was MIA, Rick scrambled to send a messenger to him. The report left Logan reeling in confusion. Based on his forbidden memories of the future, this conflict was 2 months early. The timeline had accelerated. The messenger begged him to move now, revealing that Tessran had already blitzed their borders immediately after his speech, ignoring every rule of engagement. Logan had to reach the front lines fast. Kaisalon and the mercenaries stood tall, announcing they were locked and loaded. Logan noted Kaisalon's eerie lack of surprise. The veteran shrugged. War is a mercenary's playground. If the world is too peaceful, they'll start a fire. With their new gear, they were itching for a real test. Logan surveyed his bloodthirsty battalion and sensed a dangerous level of hype. Yet he didn't pull the reins. Their ego was well earned. Months of hellish training in monster genocides had forged them. Logan declared that the timing of the war was irrelevant. Only victory mattered now. Convinced they had the firepower to crush anything, Logan gave the command to march toward the McLean Plains. He was certain of a win. Back at the barony, the nightmare started sooner than expected. A single day after the threat, Tesserin's forces loomed over the estate. The sheer scale of the army exceeded their worst-case scenarios. Hankley reported the grim numbers: 100 elite knights, 1,000 regulars, and 10,000 disposable conscripts. This wasn't a skirmish. It was total annihilation. Patrick realized Tesserin had truly lost it. He was throwing everything superhuman knights and cannon fodder alike into the fire. Caught in a brutal territorial clash, Patrick struggled to grasp why Viscount Tesseron would cross such dangerous lines. Disaster struck next. Hankley delivered the crushing news House Kiros had officially ghosted them, refusing to send a single soldier. Shock paralyzed Patrick and Mary. Mary desperately claimed it was a mistake, swearing she and Dwayne had double-checked every detail. With their backs against the wall, Patrick made a desperate call, commanding Hankley to recruit anyone who could hold a blade. They'd go all out. Patrick felt a wave of bitter betrayal as he realized House Kiros, their ultimate allies, had vanished. They were left for dead. McLean mobilized 53 knights, 552 elites, and over 4,400 raw recruits. 5,023 warriors in total. Yet they were still outnumbered 2-1. Amidst the tension, two soldiers began to mutter. One soldier questioned Logan's whereabouts. His comrade replied that the young master had vanished weeks ago, leaving them behind. Whispers spread like wildfire. The coward had likely tucked tail and run the moment things got real. Overhearing the slander, Ronian snapped his gaze icy as he demanded the troops shut their mouths. He insisted Logan wasn't a quitter. Ronian was certain his brother had predicted this bloodbath from the very beginning. That secret technique Logan shared was proof. There was zero chance his brother would abandon them now. Ronian's defense fell on deaf ears. Instead of calming the men, it fueled the toxic gossip of desertion within the ranks. Rumors of the heir's betrayal spread fast. Suddenly, Patrick stepped up beside Ronian, his presence heavy with grim resolve. He told Ronian to step up and fill Logan's shoes, commanding his youngest to strike without mercy or hesitation. Stay sharp. Patrick suppressed his own doubts about his son. Faith was a luxury they could no longer afford. Only survival remained. With a roar, he ordered the charge, seeking to annihilate the trash, invading their sacred land. Tesserin emerged with a smug grin, visibly excited to see Patrick finally unsheath his blade for the final showdown. He boasted that his knights were unstoppable, daring Patrick to engage. Unleashing his aura, Patrick lunged into the fray. He tried to shatter the front line, but a massive shield-bearer intercepted him, bringing his momentum to a dead halt. As Patrick recoiled, Rick watched from the sidelines, his face pale as he witnessed the unfolding carnage. Seeing his comrades ripped apart in a literal meat grinder, the terrifying reality of their defeat finally set in. They were so desperate, they'd thrown support staff into the fire, just to bridge the massive gap in numbers. Total encirclement meant certain death. Suddenly, a heavy blow to the head sent Rick's world spinning into darkness. An enemy blade swung for his throat, but a comrade lunged in, gutting the attacker just in time. "Get up and fight," his savior roared. Rick reached out to express his gratitude, but the words died in his throat. A knight's blade silenced his savior instantly, painting Rick's face crimson. In that moment, a brutal realization hit him. Survival meant one thing: running. As the cavalry thundered toward them, Rick knew he had to flee this nightmare. Tripping over mangled bodies, Rick's heart sank as he spotted enemy banners closing in from their rear. They were trapped. This was a graveyard. Meanwhile, Patrick pushed his limits, parrying lethal strikes while struggling to maintain his footing. His opponent smirked, admitting that the legendary McLean strength wasn't just a myth after all. Patrick felt a chill. Despite his preparations, his stamina was fading fast against these meticulously trained assassins. This monster had tanked explosive aura-infused strikes and was still standing tall, completely unfazed. Horror dawned on Patrick. Tesseron had somehow secured a high-tier knight for this assault. Their flawless teamwork suggested the entire squad was comprised of intermediate-level elites. This was a setup. Their lack of fear was eerie. Patrick growled, asking if they were the executioners sent to end his line. The enemy laughed mockingly, asking Patrick if he appreciated the effort they'd put into his funeral arrangements. Boxed in by 4 elites, Patrick knew if he didn't break out now, his entire army would be slaughtered. As the net tightened, he raised his blade once more, roaring a defiant oath to protect his family. Steel clashed with steel, but a hidden spearman lunged from the shadows, targeting Patrick's exposed back. Barely dodging the lethal tip, Patrick's rage boiled over as the cowards swarmed him from every angle. He spat on their lack of honor, calling them spineless curs, but his insults were met with cold indifference. A knight scoffed, telling Patrick to stop whining since these would be the final words he'd ever speak. Pouring his life force into one last strike, Patrick clashed blades, but fate finally turned its back on him. A cold spear tip erupted through his gut. As blood pooled, the agonizing truth of his defeat finally set in. Locked in a deadly dance with an elite knight, Patrick was a sitting duck for the rest. This wasn't a duel, it was a slaughter. As the steel trap closed in, Patrick felt a bitter relief that Logan had escaped. At the very least, his son was safe. He prayed Logan would survive to rebuild the McLean legacy from the ashes. Meanwhile, lurking in the distance, Tesseron savored the carnage with a twisted grin. His secret weapon, that high-tier knight, was performing exactly as planned. With Patrick out of the way, the castle was a freebie. But just as he prepared to deliver the final blow, a thunderous rhythm shook the earth behind him. A scout scrambled forward, his face pale, reporting an incoming cavalry unit. Hundreds of riders were screaming toward their rear. Tesseran's heart skipped. Did the McLeans have a secret ace up their sleeve? Impossible. They shouldn't have hidden troops. Then the scout's voice trembled, mentioning something was seriously wrong with this unit. No lances, no heavy plate, just tiny crossbows. Tesseran's tension snapped, and he burst into a fit of mocking laughter. Hunter's toys, he sneered. He dismissed the threat with a wave ordering his archers to erase those peasants from the map. He laughed at the fifth-rate trash. Then a bolt hissed through the air, piercing the scout's skull, mid-sentence. Tesseran's blood ran cold inside his armor. Logan had arrived, eyes burning with pure rage as he roared the command to fire. A lethal storm of steel descended. These weren't normal bolts, they tore through shields and plate armor like they were made of paper. The ground was painted red in seconds. One survivor realized that even a heartbeat's delay in raising a shield meant an instant trip to the afterlife. He was only alive because of pure, terrifying luck. Tesseran's archers desperately fired back, but their arrows pathetically fell short. Logan was completely out of their range. Another wave followed, harvesting souls by the dozen. Tesseran watched in horror as his entire rear guard disintegrated. His mind reeled. No magic, no high-tier spells, just those demonic crossbows rewriting the laws of the battlefield. What kind of monster weapon was this? Consumed by fury, Tesseran shrieked for his knights to pivot and crush the bastards. Steel-clad riders thundered toward Logan's position. He just smiled, a predator watching its prey. Nearby, another life-or-death struggle raged. Ronian was dancing on the edge of a blade. He barely evaded a lethal swing, his opponent laughing at his struggle. Not bad for a kid, the knight taunted. Amidst the screams of battle, a nearby soldier barked a warning. Stop playing with your food, people are dying. The knight hissed back that he wasn't holding back, not even a little. This brat was surprisingly dangerous. Hearing their exchange, a switch finally flipped deep inside Ronian's soul. The prodigy label didn't matter here. This was a meat grinder, and he was just a boy trying to survive. Awakening his force early meant nothing if he died today. But losing wasn't an option. His father was counting on him. He was carrying Logan's burden now. Doubt was a luxury he couldn't afford on this blood-soaked ground. Then in the chaos, an opening appeared. An enemy soldier foolishly turned his back, completely wide open for a killing blow. Why was he so careless? It didn't matter. Ronian knew this golden opportunity would never happen twice. He lunged his blade, carving through the man with terrifying ease. Even Ronian gasped at how simple it was to kill. That's when he saw it, a crossbow bolt already buried in the man's chest. His eyes shot toward the horizon. Relief washed over him. There was Logan silhouetted against the fire, screaming his brother's name with everything he had. The reunion was cut short. A wave of enemy knights thundered toward them, redirected by the Viscount's desperate orders. They were gunning for Logan. He watched their approach instantly, identifying their heavy kite shield formation. It was a textbook defense, nearly impenetrable. Nearly. But Logan had a counter for everything. Time for the main event. Logan signaled his mercenaries to angle their weapons toward the earth. The men were baffled, but then Logan flashed that twisted, psychotic grin. The real order followed. Fire at the horses, honor was for the dead, winning was all that mattered. His men grinned back, sharing his bloodlust. Steel rained on the mounts. Screaming horses buckled and crashed, turning the elite charge into a tangled mess of meat. Knights were launched like ragdolls, as their momentum betrayed them. Logan exhaled. He had saved Ronian just in time. One brother safe, but the patriarch was still drowning in enemies. The real fight was just beginning. He had returned to this life to protect his kin. A hollow victory meant nothing if his father fell today. He barked a command to Castellan and charged. Castellan's heart nearly stopped. This was a suicidal detour from the plan. Charging alone was madness. Even with Logan's strength, one high-tier enemy could end the McLean line forever. Swallowing his fear, Castellan ordered covering fire. Logan was now a force of nature, carving a path through hell itself. Patrick was locked in a lethal stalemate with the elite knight, and the situation looked absolutely hopeless. The knight sneered, mocking Patrick for his suicidal and reckless charge into the fray. Sensing a lethal thrust, Patrick twisted his body, barely escaping a fatal impaling at the very last second. Watching the enemy's movements, something felt off. They were fighting with a terrifying, illogical desperation. They were literally throwing their lives away. Why were these dominant forces acting like cornered rabid animals? Patrick parried 2 incoming lances in a flash. Suddenly, like a phantom, Logan appeared on the scene. In a heartbeat, Logan slaughtered 2 mid-tier knights, leaving Patrick completely paralyzed with shock. Patrick recalled Logan infiltrating the rear lines with a small mercenary squad far from this location. Reaching this spot so fast was impossible, but as Patrick turned, a bone-chilling sight froze his soul. An endless sea of corpses littered the earth, stretching across the entire blood-soaked battlefield. Patrick burned to ask how Logan became this monstrously strong, but logic had already fled the scene. He asked the only vital question: was victory finally within reach? Logan gave a simple stoic nod. Relief washed over Patrick as he gripped his son's shoulder, whispering that he'd done an incredible job. The elite knight stared at Logan, stunned that a 20-year-old from some backwater barony had slain elites. Logan made it look effortless, while the knight had literally broken his own body just to reach rank. Fueled by ego, the knight resolved to kill Logan instantly, barking orders for his broken men to regroup. Patrick realized the truth: Logan was now powerful enough to solo most mid-level knights on this field. If Logan handled the fodder while Patrick focused on the elite, they might actually survive this hell. But Logan stepped forward, extending his arm to block Patrick, declaring he would take the boss alone. Patrick shouted in protest, acknowledging Logan's growth but warning him that this enemy was a high-tier monster. Logan silenced him with a savage punch to the gut, sending his father crashing into the dirt. Logan bluntly stated he could beat his father in this state, telling Patrick to just trust his son. The fight was his. Reluctantly, Patrick yielded, begging Logan to be careful in this final clash. "No time for talk," Logan replied, needing a quick finish as the elite knight's rage boiled over. "You dare, brat," the knight roared, charging forward and pouring every ounce of strength into a strike. Their blades collided with a deafening boom, and Logan sent the elite knight skidding back several meters. The knight was baffled. Logan was injured and lacked a superior aura, yet he was being physically overpowered. He figured Logan was burning his life force to fight. With lethal intent, the knight lunged again. They exchanged sonic speed blows, leaping through the air as their steel locked in a shower of sparks. The knight cursed his own injuries, but Logan caught it a split-second opening in the enemy's defense. He lunged, carving a deep wound into his foe before flipping back to dodge the desperate counter. The knight realized Logan was a tactical genius. To win, he had to force an opening himself. Suddenly, both warriors noticed the truth. The knight was cleverly absorbing the momentum of Logan's heavy strikes. Thinking the trap was set, the knight declared victory and prepared to deliver the final killing blow. Logan seemed off balance, but the lethal strike missed. Logan had regained his footing in a literal heartbeat. The knight questioned his own speed as Logan's aura exploded, preparing a legendary sacred technique. Terror gripped the knight as he tried to flee, but Logan unleashed a devastating wave of cutting energy. The high-ranking knight was instantly erased. A heavy absolute silence descended upon the entire battlefield. Logan bellowed his name, announcing he had slain the general. Pure panic surged through the enemy ranks. Soldiers froze in horror. Their general was dead, the banner was gone, and their morale completely shattered. Weapons hit the dirt as the army surrendered. Rick led a chant, screaming Logan's name in worship. The battlefield echoed with Logan's name as the cowardly Viscount was already sprinting for his life. The Viscount's mind spiraled, unable to comprehend how his perfect plan had turned into this nightmare. 3 years of preparation and 100 elite knights had been reduced to absolute garbage. His entire legacy had collapsed, all because of that one single, cursed, red-haired boy. Facing those bizarre weapons and Logan's monstrous power, Tesron's instincts screamed survival. He just had to reach his own borders. He might just escape with his life. Reaching his fortress, he screamed for the sentries to swing the gates wide. The garrison froze, stunned by their lord's frantic return. But as the iron bars groaned, a scout spotted movement afar. A warning rang out. Knights were closing in with Logan at the vanguard. Tesron paralyzed at the sight of his pursuer. Logan dismounted with terrifying calm, mocking the Viscount's desperate sprint. Standing right before the enemy threshold, Logan's voice boomed across the battlements, declaring for all to hear that Tesron's war was already over. He commanded the garrison to surrender and welcome their true master. High above, the soldiers' morale began to crumble. They whispered in fear. Was their lord's panic proof of defeat? Before the doubt could spark a mutiny, a general's roar cut through, demanding to know if they were cowards who trembled at mere words. The troops snapped to attention. The general sneered, pointing out that Logan had barely 300 men at his back. As Logan's aura flared like a sun, the general insisted that such a tiny force could never crack their walls. The gate guards watched in confusion until Logan suddenly defied gravity and soared over the towering ramparts. He cleared the wall in one impossible leap, landing inside, and ordering the general to open the gates immediately. Choose life or I'll paint the walls red and open these gates over your corpses myself. Deep in the palace, Tesron was desperately shoving gold into sacks, obsessed with saving his fortune above all else. He just needed enough to live in luxury. Suddenly, a cold voice chilled his spine. Logan had finally caught up. Tesron tripped over his own feet, stammering in horror at how Logan got inside. Logan's gaze was pure ice. He revealed that Tesron's own servants had flipped before a single sword was even drawn. That spoke volumes about what a trash ruler he was. Tesron cursed them, but his rage quickly dissolved into terror. He fell to his knees begging for mercy and promising massive reparations based on noble traditions. He pleaded for his life and his family's safety. Logan just smirked, looking down at the pathetic sight. He asked what right a snake had to mention tradition. He reminded Tesron of his unprovoked one-day invasion. Logan's rage was barely contained, a vein throbbing on his temple from the sheer audacity of the man. Did this man even have a soul? Tesron tried one final play, claiming noble law protected all prisoners. Logan paused, then nodded slowly. He would agree, but only on one specific condition. He would uphold the legendary honor of House McLean. Thus, Tesron's life would be spared for now, and he could take a small portion of his riches and vanish forever. Tesron opened his mouth to thank him, but Logan cut him off. If my father were here, he'd truly do that. Patrick was too noble for his own good. As Logan spoke, a diamond-encrusted dagger caught his eye. He picked it up, admiring the lethal craftsmanship. Tesron desperately urged him to keep it as a gift. He babbled about it being the kingdom's finest work. But Logan refused and told Tesron to hold it. Then in a flash, Logan buried the blade deep into Tesron's heart. Collapsing, the Viscount gasped that Logan lied. He'd promised mercy, but Logan just stated he'd only described what his father would have done. Too bad for Tesron, Logan wasn't his father. As the man choked, Logan asked if he knew how many died for his greed. He told the coward to end his filthy existence right then. Tesron slumped lifeless to the cold floor. Staring at the body, Logan figured the man should be thankful for such a swift end. He tightened his blood-slicked grip. He let out a slow, heavy breath. The nightmare was over. Now he just had to handle the finishing touches. He proclaimed loudly that Viscount Tesron had committed suicide. That would suffice. Soon after, Kazalon arrived. He directed Logan toward the castle's grim dungeons. Days passed, and Logan stood before the fortress walls again. He was with his father Patrick, who had rushed there the moment his wounds had healed. Patrick questioned the suicide. Logan just shrugged, saying the guy must have been consumed by utter despair. Patrick didn't buy it. He stepped into Logan's space and asked point blank, "Did you kill him yourself?" The air grew thick with tension. Finally, Logan broke the silence, confessing that he had executed Tesron deliberately. He argued that some threats must be uprooted, and leaving that bloodline alive was a recipe for future disaster. Patrick stared intensely at his son for a long moment. Finally, he gave a nod. Logan was a man now. Patrick sensed a deeper motive. Regardless of the rumors, he declared Logan the undisputed MVP of this conflict. A heartfelt thanks followed. Pure joy surged through Logan as he beamed at his father with a genuine smile. Flustered and stumbling over his words, Patrick praised his son's victory. Then he dropped an even bigger bombshell. The title of official heir was finally within reach, but Logan just chuckled, shook his head, and flatly declined. Stunned, Patrick demanded an explanation. Was Logan worried about his reputation? He insisted the boy's war feats were legendary. His glory could silence any hater, but that wasn't the issue. Logan calmly began to break down the truth. Ronian was the perfect fit for the mantle. In a house of knights, the kid had awakened at only 14. That was 4 years faster than Logan. His potential was through the roof, leaving Patrick completely speechless and stunned. He argued that raw power doesn't make a leader. Logan admitted that, in any normal world, that was true. However, if Ronian claimed the title of the continent's youngest force user, the entire political game would change. Just like in his past life, the critics would be silenced. But more importantly for the young master, he had zero interest in being a baron. Boring paperwork would only slow him down. As the big brother, he wanted Ronian to have the spotlight. He urged Patrick to delay the succession until the boy grew up. Patrick never realized Logan was such a caring brother. Touched by his selflessness, he finally agreed to the request. The decision was shelved for 5 years. Logan thanked him, but the old man wasn't done with the rewards. Patrick insisted on a proper prize. They would head home to calculate the massive mountain of war loot. We are talking hundreds of thousands of gold pieces. But Logan's expression suggested he wanted something else entirely. He had a different prize in mind. Suddenly, a shout rang out. The gates swung wide for the heroes. Citizens flocked to the streets, whispering in total shock. How could the army return in less than a week? Rumors spread that the entire war ended in 24 hours. 2 guys nearby started gossiping about the impossible feat. One wondered how they pulled it off. Had the McLean Knights always been this cracked and powerful? His friend leaned in, whispering that the young master was the secret weapon behind the entire victory. Word was that Logan's mercenary squad had single-handedly flipped the script and saved the day from certain doom. They ambushed the enemy like they had a cheat code. Another witness chimed in with even wilder details. Strange weapons had obliterated the foe, and Logan himself had reportedly crushed a high-ranking knight in single combat. A girl wondered if he'd always been a legend. Someone else scoffed, remembering his old lazy reputation. They used to think he was just a brat. But now that weird monster meat purchase finally made sense. It wasn't a joke after all. The young master had been playing 4D chess this whole time. People whispered that his troublemaker phase was just a cover. Chills ran down their spines as the praise began. A true genius built different. Logan overheard the hype and cringed so hard he almost wanted to disappear. All this fanboying was too much. Ronian teased him about the fame, but Logan just felt super awkward. He told his brother to chill, but Ronian insisted the hype was 100% deserved and real. He urged Logan to flash a smile for the adoring crowd. After a second of hesitation, he tried. Logan went for it. He attempted a heroic grin, but the result was something absolutely terrifying to behold. He looked like someone desperately holding back a bathroom emergency while sprinting for safety. Seriously, it was bad. He radiated rich lunatic vibes. The second the crowd saw that face, the cheering died in an instant. They thought he was about to catch a body. Clueless about his scary expression, Logan just stood there, confused. Ronian felt pure second-hand embarrassment. Patrick, however, looked at his son with nothing but intense fatherly pride. His eyes shone with respect. He roared for the crowd to give it up for the war's true MVP. The celebration for the champion officially kicked off. Later that evening, the party was still going strong. Under the moonlight, Logan strolled through the gardens, shocked the ceremony was still bumping even at dawn. These people had insane stamina. They were partying like they hadn't just returned from a literal bloody battlefield. The peace was shattered when Marian's voice pierced the air. She was fuming and wanted answers right now. Ronian tried to play peacemaker, but she brushed him off. She had heard the tea and was mad. She grilled him about rejecting the airship. She demanded to know what kind of game he was playing. She spat out her accusations, claiming he'd blinded everyone but her. Ronian scrambled to play peacemaker, desperate to calm the storm. He explained Kairos's betrayal had left Marian's world in ruins. Logan simply shrugged it off, his gaze shifting to the broken woman. Her bitter resentment was palpable, yet she was toothless now that her patron had vanished into the shadows. She was no longer a threat. If Logan played his cards right, he could finally bridge this gap and heal the family. He bared his soul, admitting his past months were nothing but a streak of pathetic, unreliable, and shameful failures. Fueled by jealousy and self-loathing, he regretted every move. Marian erupted, screaming at Ronian that her suspicions were finally proven. She claimed total victory. Logan was finally confessing his master plan right to their faces, just as she predicted. Ronian silenced her, desperate for peace. He bowed to Logan, excusing her spiraling, chaotic thoughts as a byproduct of trauma. Ignoring her outburst entirely, Logan's focus locked onto Ronian. He commanded his younger brother's full, undivided attention. Marian didn't need an apology, Ronian did. Stunned by the sudden shift, his brother could only gasp out a confused why. Since his return, Logan's words were empty shells. Years of cowardice and secret regret weighed heavy on his weary heart. The shadows of his past were haunting. Ronian pressed for answers, forcing the ugly truth into the light at last. For years, he'd harbored a secret hatred, masking his own pathetic weakness by resenting his own talented brother. Shame choked him as he recalled those wasted, pitiful years. With a heavy heart, he bowed low in true repentance. He begged for a genuine pardon. Ronian froze, staring at his brother's lowered head in stunned, heavy silence. Atonement felt impossible. Logan feared his sins were permanent. Then Ronian's voice finally broke the suffocating air. "It's okay," he whispered. Logan's heart stopped. Ronian had always believed kindness would eventually bring his brother back. He endured the cold, waiting for the brother he remembered. Then he flashed a radiant smile that felt like pure sunshine. It was a look that could shatter a man's defenses. Warmth surged through Logan, melting years of icy hesitation. Why was this so hard, facing Marian again? Logan swore his absolute unwavering devotion to his brother's well-being. He truly wanted Ronian as the heir. Trust wasn't earned in a day, and he knew his request was bold. It was too much to ask for now. Instead, he challenged her to watch his every future move with eagle eyes. His life now belonged to the clan's glory. As she left, Logan knew this apology was just the first step, a temporary truce. By dawn, Logan and Heir were already trekking deep into the untamed ancient woods. Heir grumbled bitterly. Why were they back on the grind so soon after surviving a bloody, exhausting war? No rest for the wicked, Logan smirked. Heir muttered his nerves, clearly frazzled by the mysterious new objective. The stakes were high. Visualizing the massive payday ahead, Logan promised this job would be a total thrill. "Trust me, it'll be fun." Heir scoffed, certain his master had finally lost his damn mind in the forest. They reached a massive clearing. Heir's jaw dropped as the scale of Logan's vision hit him like a physical blow. A mine here during the test run negotiations. Logan had made a very specific weird request instead of money. Patrick revealed Logan's true prize. He didn't want titles or gold, he wanted something far more cryptic and undervalued. Permission to survey a border hill. Patrick laughed, calling the desolate mound a useless, barren piece of dirt. It was a worthless rock. Why was Logan so obsessed with this particular patch of absolutely nothing? Maybe there's gold, Logan teased. The dark secret behind the Tesseron War wouldn't surface for another full year. Turns out Tesseron had been illegally smuggling gold from a hill hidden within stolen McLean territory. That single vein of gold had rocketed the Tesseron family into a tier of unimaginable, legendary wealth. They became titans. Until Ronian eventually butchered the entire bloodline in a fit of vengeful, righteous fury. Total annihilation. Back in the dungeons, Kaisalon had tipped Logan off about some very unique prisoners. Strange men worth a second look. One captive pleaded his innocence, claiming he was just a simple worker. He'd just been hired to move gold from the Count's secret operation. A simple job that ended in chains. The Viscount jailed them anyway. Logan facepalmed, absolutely floored by the sheer legendary idiocy of the Tesseron lords. They'd locked up 5 elite mining experts. A prisoner stammered, fearing Logan's intense burning gaze would strike him. He thought Logan was angry for them. Little did he know, Logan's inner shark was smelling a massive fortune. A gold mine of opportunity. The old man watched Logan, wondering what kind of monster he'd just encountered. To Logan, the war was just a ripple. The real storm of fortune was only just beginning to brew. But the true nightmare was still looming. Within a year, King Samuel Grandia would perish, igniting a ruthless power vacuum. 3 princes would then trigger a 3-year bloodbath, gutting the kingdom's military strength until nothing remained. Before the nation could even recover, the Empire would launch a full-scale invasion to finish them off. That domino effect spelled total ruin. Since the McLean family was factionless, they were destined to be crushed. Staying neutral meant becoming a powerless victim, but Logan spotted a golden opportunity hidden within that carnage. He refused to let this chance vanish. His plan: use the chaos to reclaim lost lands and restore his legacy. He aimed to rule the Southwest once more, and if possible, end the entire civil war himself. His ambitions reached even higher, but Haymar's voice suddenly cut through his intense daydream. Haymar barked, asking why he was spacing out. Logan snapped back, realizing he'd spiraled too deep into the future. They'd survived one crisis, but now he needed to stack power and resources at breakneck speed. To anyone else, his vision sounded like pure insanity. He needed a war chest, and he'd fund it alone. That barren hill was his secret weapon, a literal gold mine. He told his staff that treasure was buried there. He declared his intent to excavate a mine immediately, and demanded a full breakdown of the startup costs. The servants stood frozen. Haymar could only shake his head, convinced Logan had finally lost his mind. The supervisor agreed, since Tesseron paid well, but digging a gold mine felt like a fever dream. He nervously questioned if Logan was for real. Logan just nodded, claiming he'd seen the treasure himself. When the old man pressed for details, Logan shrugged it off as part of a top-secret mission. To keep things quiet, only the 6 people present would drill. This sent a chill down the man's spine. He feared Logan might silence them permanently. Plus, he argued that 6 men couldn't possibly handle the labor. He accused Logan of capping. He almost mentioned that even a dwarf couldn't pull this off, but stopped. He prayed for a miracle from Haymar, who simply told the supervisor to prepare for a living hell. Say goodbye to sleep and a normal life, he warned. The old man looked like his soul had vanished. Logan grinned, satisfied. Haymar possessed the legendary artisan grind set needed for this impossible task. Now that everyone was ready, Logan demanded the final financial price tag for the entire operation. The supervisor explained they needed test shafts first, but the initial burn would be 5 million gold pieces. Haymar chimed in, noting that building a safe infrastructure for the mine wouldn't happen overnight. Prep work alone would eat 6 months, with another 6 needed before they saw a single ounce of gold. Logan didn't flinch. It was exactly as he'd calculated. High costs, but this mine was Tesseron's true fortune. It had made Tesseron richer than most high-ranking nobles. Logan knew he had to lock this down now. If he could sell that monster meat, he'd be set, but the market wouldn't trust it for months. Then a realization struck. Why wait? If he could neutralize the toxins, he could sell it immediately. It could hit the shelves as high-end medicine. He'd handled countless poisons as a mercenary, so this was easy. Cracking the code for an antidote meant he'd be swimming in more cash than he could ever spend. A week later, Rick arrived with the goods, a mixture of night herbs, web herbs, and dripgrass. Logan corrected him. This wasn't bootleg potion. It was a high-grade neutralizing agent. He then asked for the meat. Rick pointed toward the village warehouse, where the stash was being kept just as Logan had ordered. Logan signaled it was go time, announcing they were going to treat the meat right then and there. Rick immediately started tweaking, begging Logan to let him sit this one out. Logan wasn't having it. Rick trembled, terrified of whatever horror was brewing behind those warehouse doors. Logan rolled his eyes, wondering why the guy was being so dramatic. Then the smell hit him. A wave of pure filth slammed into them. It was so foul that even a sewer would smell fragrant. Logan gagged, realizing the stench was enough to turn anyone's stomach inside out. Rick was already losing his lunch. Luckily, Logan had a cheat code ready to go. He surged his aura to shut down his sense of smell. Unfazed, he entered and told Rick to move. Rick could only stare in disbelief watching Logan walk into that biohazard, while he struggled to stand. Rick wondered how Logan stood the stench, only for Logan to reveal he had numbed his nose entirely. Rick grumbled about the unfairness of force usage, but Logan countered, if he hated it, he should awaken his own. Solve the issue for real. Logan then tossed a pouch of white neutralizing powder over to him, ordering him to coat the meat evenly. He needed a layer thick enough to turn everything snow white. Any black spots left were pure poison, requiring extreme caution. Next, Rick had to mince the whole batch, shaping the paste into tiny spheres. Holding one up, Logan questioned if it looked like legit medicine. Rick nodded in agreement. With a smirk, Logan announced they would be marketing this as a miracle cure. Since Rick was the designated chef for this project, he had to memorize every single detail. No mistakes allowed. Rick flipped out, refusing to touch the stuff until Logan mentioned 100 gold reward per pill. Rick's attitude did a complete 180 instantly. Logan, though, felt annoyed. He realized he probably could have extorted the labor for zero cost. Moving on, it was time for a trial run. Rick asked for the specific effects and Logan claimed it was for men's health. Rick was still clueless. Logan sighed, warning him that he would only break it down once, so listen up. He spoke of two bunnies, a male and female. The buck was miserable because his little foot would not work. To fix his gloom, the doe brewed him a legendary special tea. One sip later, he transformed. That little foot swelled 4 times larger, letting him stir the pot with unbelievable power. Story over. Logan checked for comprehension. Rick's eyes widened as he nodded. He totally understood now. Better yet, he already had a guinea pig in mind. Intrigued, Logan asked for a name. Without missing a beat, Rick named Mr. Dwayne. Moments later, Dwayne's knock echoed, met by a calm enter. He excused the intrusion, noting he'd heard Logan requested his presence. But once inside the room, Logan was nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, he materialized behind Dwayne like a shadow-stalking vampire, terrifying the poor man. Dwayne pulled a pro-athlete jump, clutching his heart, as he nearly suffered a total cardiac arrest from the fright. He barked at Logan for the jump scare. Logan just drifted closer, claiming he merely wanted to give a friendly shoulder rub, a reward for his tireless post-war management. Dwayne brushed it off, swearing he was perfectly okay. He insisted Lord McLean was the one struggling. Logan noted his father had collapsed from fatigue, but Dwayne countered. That only happened because Logan spooked him. Logan sighed, acknowledging the struggle. The war had drained every copper they owned. Oblivious knights and servants kept hounding him for pay, pushing the entire administration to the brink of madness. He admitted he had misjudged Logan, never realizing the young master actually cared about the administrative staff's well-being. But his gratitude was short-lived. Logan cut in, asking if all that overwhelming stress was the root of his performance issues in the bedroom. Dwayne froze, turning ghostly pale before bolting for the exit. As he scrambled to escape, Logan coolly told him to listen and pressed a pill into his palm. He pitched it as a top-tier Philip Kyle original, guaranteed results after just one single dose. Quietly, he hoped it worked since he had not actually tested it himself. Dwayne hesitated, eyeing the mysterious capsule, then gulped it down. A while later, Dwayne was caught hyper-sprinting through the castle halls at top speed, bellowing for Logan and Rick. Rick turned at the panicked cries, but Logan already knew exactly what was up. Dwayne was back for a refill. Rick tried to lecture him on hall safety, but Dwayne was beyond listening. He demanded the price for more pills instantly. The man looked desperate enough to commit murder for another dose. Logan flashed a wolfish grin. The trial was a massive success. Rick just stood there fuming about being ignored once more. Logan told Dwayne to open his hand, heaving drenched in sweat and legs shaking like jelly. Dwayne collapsed to his knees. It looked less like a business deal and more like a desperate marriage proposal. Logan stood tall, almost accepting the vows, while Rick stared in shock. He then handed over a box of pellets. Dwayne took it like a holy relic. Turns out, after that first win, men started literally worshipping at his feet. The testing phase continued for weeks. Eventually, back in the office, Logan sat with Hankley, casually dropping that he'd heard some spicy rumors regarding him and his wife. Constant late-night bickering, Hankley immediately went on the defensive, demanding to know who was spreading such cap. Logan cut him off instantly, jamming the mystery pill straight down his throat before he could object. Hankley had officially become the second lab rat, and the effects hit him like a freight train. As he tried to speak, Logan silenced him again, ordering him to bolt home to his wife immediately. Promising to handle the old man himself, Logan watched as Hankley flashed a look of pure manic gratitude. He charged out like a force of nature, clearly destined for what could only be called a legendary night. Later, Patrick appeared as the third test subject, looking absolutely stunned by the pill's god-tier results. Glancing toward his father's quarters, Logan felt a rare twinge of pity for his younger brother Ronian. At this rate, a new sibling was inevitable, and Ronian's days as the baby of the family were over. Watching the chaos, Rick finally snapped, fuming that he wasn't allowed to test the miracle drug himself. He ranted about being the one who'd put in the most blood, sweat, and tears for this project. Logan gave him a deadpan stare, glanced at Rick's lower half, and wordlessly turned his back on him. Rick screamed in confusion, demanding to know what that savage look meant as Logan walked away. Without looking back, Logan noted that since Rick had zero game, giving him the pill was a waste. He even told him to back off because he reeked Logan was clearly living for this emotional damage. Later, Logan linked up with Philip through a magic orb to discuss their high-stakes business strategy. Philip admitted the demand would be astronomical if the drug worked, then asked for the final price tag. 100 gold per pill, or 10,000 for a box. Philip nearly choked on his own spit. He warned Logan that the capital's nobles weren't idiots, and charging that much could lead to disaster. Logan didn't flinch. In his past life, he'd seen this medicine become more valuable than literal gold. He knew its success would eventually cause the market price to skyrocket into the stratosphere. He explained that, starting with limited quantities, would create an elite hype that drove prices even higher. Hooked by the logic, Philip immediately paid for more communication time to hear the rest of the plan. Logan added that the product would explode if a high-profile influencer provided a glowing personal testimonial. Philip was speechless, arguing no self-respecting noble would ever publicly admit to having performance issues. Logan smirked, explaining they didn't need an official announcement to set the rumor mill on fire. Gossip among the elite travels like wildfire. Soon they'd be swarming the product like hungry bees. Struck by inspiration, Philip suggested that Logan should attend the upcoming social season in the capital. Logan exploded, asking if he'd lost it. His family was broke and definitely didn't belong at fancy parties. His only experience with socializing was rowdy celebrations with drunken mercenaries after a bloody war. Philip countered that parties were the ultimate battlefield for networking and securing high-level business connections. Direct sales were out, but the suggestion sparked a brilliant, reckless idea in the back of Logan's mind. Philip grew worried, asking if Logan was planning something crazy that would get his family blacklisted forever. Logan laughed, promising he wouldn't actually be selling anything while he was at the gala. He then ordered Philip to locate a top-tier informant in the capital to gather some specific intel. Philip hesitated, deeply concerned about whatever chaotic masterclass Logan was currently cooking up. Logan ended the call with a simple promise he'd explain everything once he arrived in Gran. Philip had a sinking feeling. 1 week later, Logan finally stepped foot into the legendary capital city. Philip stared in pure disbelief, stunned that the young noble had actually followed through on the trip. He questioned how Logan managed to get his family's blessing for an aphrodisiac sales mission. Logan shrugged, admitting he hadn't exactly shared the full truth about his inventory with his father. Hauling 3,000 boxes solo was a pain, but his war feats made his father surprisingly lenient. His legendary accomplishments on the battlefield had earned him a massive amount of personal freedom. Philip noted that Logan was traveling without a single servant, just like the first time they met. He asked if it was really appropriate for a noble heir to be wandering around completely solo. Logan noted that servants just slowed him down. Besides, Rick had his own messy jobs to handle. Along with the massive burden he'd passed on, Logan reflected on his bond with Rick. Sure, he played the harsh mentor, but in both lifetimes, Rick had been his ride or die. Behind the stern face, Logan felt a deep, silent gratitude. Suddenly, a memory of Rick's sticky fingers flashed, specifically that time he'd swiped a mountain of medicine. Logan had delivered a chilling ultimatum: for every single pill that tumbled out during a shakedown, Rick would catch a fist. Call it Spartan affection. Right then, Logan's eyes sharpened as he reached a final definitive conclusion. Wanting a legendary way to celebrate their grind, he officially christened his new miracle drug, Emporic. Nothing says honoring a legacy like naming an impotence pill after your best friend. Philip officially realized Logan was delusional. The man was a straight-up lunatic. Back at the dorm, Philip noticed Logan's exhaustion and suggested a little liquid therapy. He figured a bar was the perfect spot to decompress after their grueling trek, but Logan shut him down instantly. He warned Philip to watch his mouth, announcing a cure for performance issues in a crowded room was a death sentence. Philip conceded. The quiet of the room was definitely safer for discussing such delicate biological hardware problems. Switching gears, Philip confirmed the intel was ready. He double-checked if Logan was truly prepared to drop the bag. 900 gold pieces per document was highway robbery, but Logan knew the informant's accuracy was worth every penny. Precision was everything. Clear requests yielded flawless data. Philip assured him the criteria had been followed to the letter. The first file listed every high-ranking noble who had been married for 10 years with 0 heirs to show for it. The second filtered for those without any secret lovers, while the third tracked nobles obsessed with energy-boosting superfoods. Logan grinned. The data was a goldmine. With these targets identified, their master plan was officially a go. He gave Philip his flowers, praising his flawless execution not just here, but for every shady task in the capital. Philip played it cool, saying it was light work, though he admitted the real stress started when war broke out. He confessed to Logan that he'd been spiraling with anxiety until he finally heard the news that the conflict had ended. That night, as Logan scanned the documents, he felt a rare spark of warmth, knowing Philip actually cared. But that sentiment evaporated fast. Philip began whining about the massive heaps of monster meat they still had to sell. The thought of dealing with those beastly carcasses was literally making him lose his appetite and his mind. Who's actually going to buy that trash? Philip groaned. Logan didn't argue, he just launched a rolled-up paper at his head. It struck Philip's face with sniper-like precision. Logan told him to quit yapping and start reading the first target's file. Rubbing his forehead, Philip wondered how a piece of paper could hurt that much. He began scanning the names list. Logan asked which noble should be their first victim, but Philip didn't answer. A single tear escaped his eye. Logan locked in, sensing the shift in the room. He waited in silence as Philip pointed a trembling finger at a name. Philip whispered, asking Logan what he thought about this specific individual. Logan leaned in to check the sheet. His face went pale. Pure shock washed over him as he recognized the name instantly. Flash forward to a glittering ballroom. Under the glow of a massive chandelier, the elite were sipping champagne. One man stood out like an absolute unit. Dressed in a loud red jacket, Count Davis was busy charming a group of ladies, until Logan shouted his name. The Count froze. He spun around, his expression shifting from confusion to a mix of pure disgust and underlying dread. Logan didn't flinch. He stepped forward, introducing himself as Logan McLean, the eldest heir of the prestigious House McLean. Davis fought to keep his mask on, masking a condescending laugh as he offered a fake welcome to the party. He scanned Logan's outfit, mentally labeling it a total disaster. He wondered which backwater farm Logan had crawled out of. He assumed the tacky look was just Southwest fashion. Little did he know, Logan had dressed like this on purpose. Philip had picked the fit, and since everyone hated it, Logan knew it was the perfect bait for his plan. He wasn't there for networking. He had one target, Count Davis, the man history would remember as the Fallen One. A titan in the kingdom's treasury, who married at 20, yet remained childless decades later. He was the perfect mark. Seeing him on the list was a shock, because in Logan's previous life, Davis's end was legendary for all the wrong reasons. He was famous as the broken count who took his own life because of his wife's brutal public humiliation. A memory surfaced of a high society blowout, where Davis's wife had screamed the truth for the whole world to hear. She had called him an impotent bastard in front of the entire court, a blow his pride couldn't survive. To men like Davis, reputation was life itself. He hit every requirement, and Logan was about to change his fate. Logan played his cards right. The informant led him straight to his first high-stakes target. He approached the Count. Claiming a business trip, Logan showered the man with praise, insisting on a personal greeting for the capital's elite. The Count scoffed, asking why a merchant from the sticks would bother in a city that already had everything. He mocked Logan's roots, assuming he was peddling some weird rural junk that wouldn't exist in the capital. Logan didn't flinch, assuring the noble that his product was a rare treasure, nowhere to be found in town. Leaning in, he whispered into Davis's ear about a specialized tonic designed exclusively for the most powerful men. The word stimulant hit like a thunderclap. Davis froze, biting his lip, before he suddenly erupted in fake fury. He roared for the room to hear. How dare a brat sell such things? Nearby ladies winced at the drama. The Count figured he'd crushed this country bumpkin, relishing the look of supposed defeat on Logan's face. Logan just sighed deeply, letting the performance play out before shifting gears to say something else. He offered a small box as a gift for the capital's influencers, urging the Count to accept his respect. Handing over the case, he introduced Imparek, claiming each pill was worth a staggering 100 gold coins. He presented 3 pills specifically for the Count, guaranteeing legendary results, with absolutely zero side effects or risks. Davis stood there, sweating, his noble pride crumbling as he realized the potential of Logan's offer. Putting his honor on the line, Davis listened intensely. Fast forward, a knock finally echoed at Logan's front door. It was the Count's servant sent on a desperate mission to restock their supply of the miracle medicine. The attendant confirmed his identity and quickly made off with a briefcase stuffed with gold for the master. Philip watched him leave with a smirk, thanking him for the business and inviting a speedy return. Back inside, Philip started stacking the loot, his eyes practically glowing as he counted their first massive payout. 10,000 gold from just 10 boxes. Philip was hyped, but Logan's expression remained cold and focused. Logan reminded him that their tiny shop's rent was astronomical, eating through their profits faster than expected. Philip argued that Center City real estate was a battlefield, and securing this specific spot had been pure hell. But the store was essential for the vibe. Seeing the physical crowd would spark an unstoppable psychological FOMO. Logan agreed and grabbed his coat for another party, leaving Philip to groan about their non-stop networking. Ever since they hit the capital, it was gala after gala, sometimes hitting 2 high society events a day. Logan knew Davis was just the spark. He needed to ignite the entire list to dominate the market. Promotion was key. A week later, Davis's servant was back on the street, still shocked by his master's obsession. He couldn't believe the Count wanted more, especially since every other health food had failed in the past. But as he approached the shop, he stopped dead. A massive line of desperate men snaked down the block. He scanned the crowd and realized every single person in line was a high-ranking butler or elite attendant. He recognized the chamberlains of various viscounts and counts. Fearing a scandal, he yanked his hat low. Hoping to slip in and out without gossip, he decided to just buy the goods and ghost. Suddenly, Philip stepped out and raised his hands, silencing the restless crowd with a single devastating announcement. Today's entire stock of Empiric was officially sold out. The announcement sent the servants into a total panic. One servant confronted Philip, demanding to know how they were already empty when no one had said anything. Philip apologized, explaining that demand was so insane that production simply couldn't keep up with the city's appetite. From now on, they were capping sales at 50 boxes daily. The news sent waves of desperation through them. Men started pleading, offering anything to avoid their master's wrath. They couldn't go back empty-handed. Nearby, another noble noticed the riotous crowd and sent his staff to investigate the cause of the commotion. Watching from the shadows, Logan smirked. Scarcity was his greatest weapon, making the elite even hungrier for more. Everything was going exactly as he'd envisioned. The buzz was real, and curiosity was spreading like wildfire. Philip shouted one last time for the crowd to clear out, telling everyone to try their luck tomorrow morning. Day 2 sold out, Day 3 gone in minutes. The entire capital was losing its mind over the pills. Logan marveled at the sheer scale of the success. Their daily sales had been vertical for an entire month. Today, the doors barely opened before the stock vanished. The Empiric legend had officially conquered the capital. At this blistering pace, hauling in 4.5 million gold every month was actually within reach. Logan smirked, mocking the capital's elite. Who knew there were so many desperate nobles in this city? Prices had tripled since mid-year, yet the hungry crowds were begging to throw even more cash at them. He feigned concern for the kingdom's crumbling future before locking eyes with Philip in a chilling, dead-serious gaze. Suddenly, a predatory grin stretched across his face as he erupted into a bone-chilling, maniacal fit of laughter. His booming voice spilled onto the streets, grabbing everyone's attention. Beneath the madness, he was just vibing with joy. Snatching Philip into a headlock, he ruffled his hair aggressively, calling him one hell of an impressive brat. He showered the boy with praise while Philip literally turned purple, gasping for air in his iron grip. Bowing low, Philip thanked him profusely. Logan just nodded, glad the kid finally recognized the weight of his hustle. Starting next week, a 1% commission of all sales was his. Hearing that, Philip basically started glitching. He screamed his loyalty and even lunged for a kiss, completely losing his mind in the heat of the moment. Outside, a cloaked shadow lingered. A weathered face hid beneath a hood, his blonde beard shimmering in the dim light. Back at the magic shop, Logan's voice suddenly boomed from the shadows as he worked the communication line. 10 tons of gold annually. That scream made everyone freeze. Logan stopped dead, realizing he'd said too much. Eyes glued to the entrance, he whispered into the orb, questioning if this was real. Heir was on the line. Heir doubled down, explaining that the veteran miners were betting everything on this being the real deal. Pure gold nuggets were buried deep within the hill's core. Logan couldn't tear his eyes away from the orb. Gritting his teeth, his fist shook with an intensity that bordered on insane. Even his lowest estimates were mind-blowing. 10 tons meant roughly 100 million gold coins. He hadn't just found a mine, he'd hit the ultimate jackpot. This was the mother of all lotteries. But Heir warned that the extraction costs were steep, questioning Logan's budget. Opening this gold mine required 5 million gold up front. Without flinching, Logan gave Heir his word. He had the resources. Just wait, he commanded. I'll assemble the capital and the workforce immediately. Heir stayed chill, simply reminding Logan to show his future workers some mercy once the sun went down. Prowling the city streets, Logan's mind raced as he calculated the massive 5 million gold price tag for the investment. At his current sales velocity, he was raking in nearly 4.5 million gold every single month. Just 60 days of business would cover the costs and still leave him with a massive mountain of profit. With 700 crates of meds left, it was time to head home and restock the inventory for a takeover. He was ready to focus on his mental training, but a sudden shift in the air snapped him back. His eyes darted toward a nearby shop. Someone was inside. Without a second thought, he charged toward the entrance. Bracing for a robbery, he shattered the piece by kicking the door open, slamming it hard against the stone. He scoured every corner, but the room was eerie and silent. Logan's hand instinctively went to his hilt. Did they vanish? No, there was only one exit. The intruder was definitely still lurking in the dark. Suddenly, a blur of motion flickered past him. Reacting on instinct, he swung his blade at the fleeing hooded figure. Whiff, he roared, demanding the intruder reveal themselves, but the shadows were empty when he spun around. Steel pointed at the void, his heart thrashed against his ribs. This was impossible. The presence was real, he felt it again. Snapping his gaze upward, he realized the thief was scaling the roof. He lunged toward the sky, closing the distance instantly. His blade was raised, hungry for a decisive strike. The target shifted just in time. Landing on the roof, Logan leveled his sword, demanding the stranger's name. Silence was the only reply before the figure dissolved into the night, leaving Logan standing there in utter shock. How could someone just disappear? He'd been inches away, yet now there wasn't even a trace of mana left. Looking down, he realized his fingers were clutching a torn fragment of the stranger's cloak. He stared at it. Confused as hell, Logan briefed Philip the next morning. Their verdict: they were dealing with an elite aura user. Logan theorized that the intruder wasn't just a petty thief, but at least an advanced force user. We're talking about monsters far beyond the level of high-ranking knights. And this wasn't just a hunch. The guy was on a completely different plane. Philip's jaw dropped. An aura user acting as a common thief. For a common thief, his presence was regal enough to command respect from anyone. Logan couldn't fathom why such a person was resorting to petty crimes. When he inquired about the stolen goods, Logan dropped a bombshell. It was exactly what Philip suspected. The culprit had swiped precisely 2 pills of performance-enhancing medicine. Just hearing the news, Logan realized that a 2-pill heist wasn't about the gold. He was definitely the end user. Philip then asked the obvious: do even elite aura masters struggle with manhood? The realization finally hit Logan, and he nodded. Then Logan questioned if any high-tier names appeared on the informant's list, but Philip shook his head. The source demanded a massive premium for classified intel, and Philip had declined the offer. However, upon a second thought, Philip recalled a specific candidate, a legendary warrior in the capital without any heirs. A massive, sharp-dressed blonde noble with a thick beard strolled beside his wife, observing children at play. A gentle warmth masked his blue eyes, which were heavy with suppressed yearning. He jumped slightly when his wife questioned his gaze. Pivoting quickly, he claimed he was simply enjoying the city's charm. Beads of sweat formed as she eyed him skeptically, seeing right through his clumsy distraction. He insisted he was just soaking in the view, nothing more. Wrapping her in a hug, he suggested they return home immediately. Dismissing his haste, she softly confessed how meeting him was her greatest blessing, asking if he knew. Pure joy lit up his face as a faint grin touched his mustache. He pulled her closer, echoing her heartfelt sentiment. This was none other than Felix Esperanza, the realm's supreme blade. His hidden agony and lingering trauma stemmed from a brutal sacrifice made during his youthful days at war. A devastating blow had struck him below the belt. Back then, it was hailed as a glorious scar of battle. He initially shrugged it off, but years later Felix questioned the worth of his ducal crown and his strongest title if no son would ever inherit his legacy. Everything felt hollow and void. A flashback showed Felix revealing his painful secret to his wife. Her reaction left him completely stunned. She didn't flinch. Instead, through tear-filled eyes, she acknowledged his immense suffering and asked if he could accept her remaining by his side forever. Overwhelmed, Felix wondered how he could ever return such unconditional devotion. Later, Felix paced through the serene palace gardens accompanied by a trusted aide. The servant cautioned him that the council was about to convene, and wondered why he wasn't hurrying. Felix scoffed, knowing the meeting would only revolve around his lack of an heir. Sensing the tension, the servant whispered about a miraculous new elixir trending in the capital's black market. Felix shot back with a bitter, sarcastic grin, questioning its legitimacy. The aide persisted, claiming the potion could mend even permanent physical damage, but Felix remained cold. He pushed further, acknowledging Felix's skepticism, while citing numerous reports of impossible recoveries. Felix cast his gaze downward, drowning in the shame of having already tested the remedy in secret. Even worse, he had resorted to theft. Despite the guilt over his wife's tears, he couldn't believe he had broken his code. It was a stain on his knightly honor. To make matters worse, the medicine had been a total dud. He warned Louis, his attendant, not to fall for such fairy tales. He tried to convince himself that the miracle cure was pure fiction. If divine aura couldn't fix him, nothing else could. It was time to finally surrender to fate. Meanwhile, at the massive gates, Logan confronted a guard who barred his entry, demanding a formal invitation to see Felix. Logan, with total composure, told the guard to just mention his name, confident the Duke would grant an audience instantly. Just hours prior, Philip had nearly fainted when Logan revealed his plan to approach the Duke in person. Logan gave a firm nod as Philip began roasting him, asking if he was actually going to hunt down the kingdom's apex predator just to ask about his stolen meds and bedroom issues. Philip was spiraling and couldn't believe the audacity, but Logan just smirked. Philip begged him to drop the whole thing before they got killed. He warned that one wrong move would end them both. Now, waiting in the grand hallway, Logan knew the risks were high, but if that man was truly the Sword Duke, this gamble was necessary. Suddenly, a butler emerged, swinging open a heavy, ornate door and signaling Logan to enter the lion's den. Felix loomed by the window. Approaching the legendary sword, Duke Logan realized his moment had finally arrived. He needed to win over this absolute monster of a warrior. Swallowing his nerves, he offered a respectful salute. Logan introduced himself as the McLean heir. But as he scanned the old man, something felt completely off. Despite his 70 years, the Duke's face was impossibly youthful. This wasn't natural, it was an anomaly. He's using aura to defy time itself, Logan realized. Felix acknowledged the southwestern McLean lands with a cold nod. Why travel so far, the Duke pressed. Keeping his true motives hidden, Logan carefully chose his next words. He claimed to be launching a capital venture and offered a luxury gift, sliding a sleek box across the table. He touted it as a premium vitality tonic, already a viral sensation among the kingdom's highest-ranking elite. Felix eyed the parcel skeptically. Logan bowed, hiding his suspicion that this man might be the thief from yesterday. The doubt was eating him alive, but it was time to gamble. He decided to turn up the heat. Standard meds won't cut it for a legend, Logan smirked, so I brought the high-tier exclusive stuff instead. That got a reaction. A flicker of interest crossed Felix's face, and Logan knew he had finally hooked the fish. The Duke's boredom was proof. In the latest version of Empyrean, the toxins hidden within the monster meat were finally suppressed. While potent enough as a spicy stimulant, those trace poisons wouldn't even tickle a superhuman's reinforced biology. Since Felix was built different, Logan distilled that venom repeatedly, forging an incredibly lethal and concentrated serum. He pitched it as a limited edition Empyrean variant, and finally, the legendary man was hooked by the bait. Truthfully, it was 50 pills packed into a single dose. Logan personally vouched for its devastating potency. He warned that the agony alone would slay a commoner yet for an elite aura master. That was a different story. If this satisfied him, Logan promised to supply a massive stockpile under total secrecy. He would manufacture as much as Felix desired, guaranteeing that no one else would ever know. By morning, Felix looked completely rejuvenated, the ultimate proof of success. He turned to Logan with fire in his eyes. He offered to grant any wish within his reach. Inside, Logan was screaming with joy, but he kept his cool. Logan played dumb, but Felix insisted that as an aura master, he held absolute dominion over his own vitality. He knew exactly when a treatment worked. The miracle drug had been flawless through nearly 30 consecutive sessions. The benefits stacked until his recovery was total. That suffocating emptiness and torment were finally vanishing forever. Felix marveled at the young man's thoughtfulness, bringing such a precious gift while ignoring his previous clumsy mistakes. He also praised Logan's swordsmanship, noting that his skill ceiling was insane for someone so young. Only a prodigy like him could possess such a mystical cure, confirming Felix's high opinion of the boy. After such a long drought, the poor man had almost lost his mind. He confessed he spoke too early before, but now Logan's gift finally offered a path to curing his long-standing, agonizing condition. He demanded to settle the debt properly. As Logan stared at the floor, his eyes turned sharp and calculated. He simply requested a manual on sword arts. Felix scoured his archives and presented a dusty, ancient tome. He cautioned that self-taught practice could wreck his body, though the insights within were truly legendary. Logan bowed in thanks, then requested a formal letter, proving he had received the manual. Felix agreed instantly. Logan savored his victory, though he briefly lamented not milking the Duke for more. One book seemed like a small prize from a Duke, but Logan's true objective was far more complex. Suddenly, Felix paused, sensing that this lopsided deal didn't sit right with his warrior's pride. Before Logan could react, Felix announced he would personally instruct him in a secret blade technique. Logan was stunned into silence. The realm's most powerful swordsman was becoming his personal mentor. Felix acknowledged his humility, but felt that handing over a basic manual was simply insulting. It didn't sit right with him. Even with the divine sword's secrets, Logan knew refusing this was pure madness. You'd have to be insane to decline a lesson from the kingdom's undisputed powerhouse. Overjoyed, he accepted the offer, knowing he had hit the jackpot yet again. Soon they moved to the arena. They squared off under the sun. Felix noted that testing elite young talent was his favorite pastime. He warned Logan to brace himself, because he had no intention of pulling his punches. Logan analyzed the master's posture. Felix commanded him to draw, but Logan was suddenly paralyzed. A titanic pressure slammed into him, making even reaching for his hilt feel impossible. This was the sheer terror of a high-tier aura user. Was every top ranker this monstrous? If every battle started with instant paralysis, combat was just a contest of sheer willpower and aura strength. But this wasn't just raw power. It was a sophisticated soul-crushing technique. Gritting his teeth, he slowly inched his blade out. He had to pivot his energy to sharpen his perception. He needed to dissect this crushing atmosphere, rather than just bracing his muscles for impact. Every movement triggered a wave of energy from Felix. Logan was baffled by the mechanics of this phenomenon. It felt impossible, yet he had to find a counter. A plan began to form in his mind. He had to strike half a beat before Felix's force could fully bloom. Logan finally unsheathed his steel and took his stance. Felix smiled, thinly impressed by the boy's sheer talent. Drenched in sweat and trembling, Logan listened as Felix prepared to reveal the true path of the sword. Felix pooled his lethal energy into his blade's edge, prepping a strike, while Logan buckled under the crushing pressure. Paralyzing terror gripped his limbs. Glancing up, the grim reality of his situation finally clicked. He stared at the shimmering blade of force. The strike was imminent, but a massive problem loomed. The Duke's overwhelming aura was pure insanity, invading his very core and short-circuiting his senses. As that crimson blade pulsed with mounting power, sheer desperation flooded his mind. Doubting he could even survive, a sudden epiphany struck. His own energy was actually dampening the Duke's pressure. Tuning out the world, he knew dodging was impossible. He needed a different play. Logan rallied his internal power, weaving it into a defensive barrier that left even Felix momentarily shook. Questioning if the kid truly intended to parry with pure force, Felix didn't hesitate. The Master Swordsman lunged into a lethal stance, drawing his energy-charged blade back to deliver a finishing blow. He vaulted forward with a cold, predatory stare. Logan locked in, bracing for the inevitable collision. Clutching his blade behind an aura-wrapped shield, a cold shiver of dread raced down his spine. Felix's impact hit like a freight train, launching Logan backward until he smashed into the stone wall. Even his steel took a beating while Felix stood there completely unfazed and breathing normally. The Duke watched coldly as Logan used his shattered sword for support, struggling to rise through his trembling. Staring at his shattered weapon, Logan's mind raced through the carnage as Felix finally turned his way. He asked if Logan really expected a lesson on something the boy could eventually learn alone. He admitted he'd seen everything, noting that Logan had subconsciously flipped his serious mode switch. With a rare look of pride, Felix praised him, genuinely impressed the kid tanked the hit head-on. Acknowledging some are just born different, Felix watched Logan faint, musing that this journey would be top-tier entertainment. Later, the butler asked if Logan was already bouncing, mentioning the Duke's invitation to stay and recover. Logan declined, insisting he was solid thanks to that high-tier potion Felix had just gifted him. Respecting the choice, the butler escorted him out, wishing him a safe trek as they reached the gate. Logan gave his thanks and dipped, vanishing from sight before the butler could even blink. The butler stood stunned by his speed while Logan rounded a corner, noticeably limping from the Duke's brutal strike. It burned like hell, but he refused to blow such a rare potion on a few bruises. He was shook that the Duke handed over a legendary-grade potion stuff you literally can't find anywhere. Though Logan's evolving core could mend minor internal issues, the damage Felix dealt was on a whole different level. Dealing with the aftermath of that clash would definitely take some serious effort. Eyeing the vial, he muttered that the gains far outweighed the pain before pulling out Felix's contact info. It contained the private communication frequency for the mansion, a direct line if things ever went south. A genuine smile cracked his face. Realizing the Duke actually viewed him as a high-value ally, it felt like the Duke was low-key treating him like a direct apprentice. That connection was going to be massive later until Philip suddenly jumped out, nearly scaring him to death. Logan gasped, demanding to know what he was doing there. Philip explained he'd been camping out for him. The second Logan emerged, Philip cornered him instantly, noticing how ghostly pale the young man looked. Freaking out, he yelled, demanding to know if Logan had disrespected the Duke and signed their death warrants. Logan laughed it off, explaining it was just a quick, intense sparring session with the legendary swordsman. Suddenly, he hacked up blood the crimson spray, sending Philip into a full-blown state of panic. Philip lost it, screaming about prepping a getaway and snagging the fastest horses to escape the Duke's wrath. Logan tried to clear the air, but Philip was already spiraling, muttering nonsense about their imminent doom. A week later at their shop, a massive sold-out sign hung on the door for Empyrean. Inside, Logan beamed with pride, announcing that their total profits had skyrocketed to 4.1 million gold. Philip grinned, noting that at this rate, crushing the 4.5 million mark was practically guaranteed. They traded confident smirks. A jubilant roar erupted from Philip, echoing far beyond the shop's walls. But the celebration vanished in an instant. Logan, turning ice cold again, asked Philip if his sheer happiness meant he was skipping this month's bonus. Philip slammed back to reality, pleading with him not to crush his dreams. Then, Logan noted that the monster meat purchased at the market would be processed flawlessly. He'd handled everything. After praising Philip's hustle, Philip suggested that Logan finally invest in a mansion within the capital. But Logan shut it down. They were only staying in the capital for another 18 months. Such an investment was pointless. He ordered Philip to keep his eyes on Empork for the time being, noting that a relocation was inevitable. When a confused Philip pressed for details, Logan simply replied that it wasn't his concern. Finally, Philip begged Logan to prioritize his health, still rattled after seeing him cough up blood. Logan shrugged, saying that was exactly why he'd isolated himself. Skeptical, Philip questioned if Logan was actually resting, since every time he peeked inside, Logan was hunched over his desk, grinding away. Once more, Logan silenced him, calling it none of his business. Philip grumbled about the constant secrecy, but Logan felt a wave of relief that his friend didn't push. Had Rick been there, he would have interrogated him until dawn. Philip then asked if Logan was heading home. Logan nodded, tasking Philip with managing the restless customers until the next shipment of Empork arrived. But he wasn't done. He commanded Philip to dispatch massive food rations immediately. 100,000 gold coins worth of food monthly for the Tesseron and McLean estates. Philip froze speechless. He gasped, asking if Logan intended to feed the whole region. Logan cut him short. It had to be done. This commitment would last a full year, so Philip needed a supplier, as soon as possible. Seeing Logan's gaze, Philip knew he was serious. He marveled at how much Logan valued his subjects. But that wasn't the whole truth. Walking away, Logan mused that this wasn't about sentiment, it was a cold, hard necessity. Ending the McLean famine would take a year. He knew their labor was the backbone of his ultimate strategy. He couldn't let his workforce starve. Preparing to depart, Logan casually mentioned he had business to attend to. Philip didn't even bother asking for details. It was just another one of Logan's endless secrets. Elsewhere, a desperate group huddled on the frigid floor of a derelict warehouse. Clinging to filthy rags for warmth, one man, his face battered and bloodied, stared blankly at the ground, utterly defeated. Meanwhile, Logan stepped into a mysterious magic shop. Sliding a list to the sorcerer, the wizard scanned the names and asked if Logan planned a manhunt. He wavered, noting that finding people with only names and vague traits meant searching the entire continent. Logan didn't blink. He coldly asked if the job was possible, promising a massive payday for success. The sorcerer hesitated, eyeing the paper once more, before reluctantly nodding his agreement. Exiting the shop, Logan knew finding them would be a nightmare. After all, these names could be aliases. Still, he had to try. He needed every rogue superhuman on his side. Failure wasn't an option. These were the elites from his previous life, who had achieved legendary status. They were lone wolves then, but they would be vital assets in the looming war. Especially one lethal mercenary who had previously served the Empire. Suddenly, Logan froze in his tracks. Exhaling sharply, he realized he was moving too fast. Because everything was going so perfectly, he'd become impatient. He glanced at the clouds, reminding himself that he still had time. He could take a breath, but his assumption of safety might be a fatal mistake. Deep within a dungeon-like chamber, a man struggled to soothe a berserk elder chief. Blinded by fury, the old man roared about his disciples being mistreated, demanding blood and answers. Mentioning a tower master, the messenger insisted he was only there to provide intel, but the elder's rage remained unquenchable. Then the old man demanded to know why his student was summoned. The messenger revealed the boy had been sent to the southwest, specifically to the McLean territory for a 6-month assignment. Upon hearing that, the elder's grip tightened as he swore the magic tower master wouldn't escape his wrath this time. This grudge was finally getting settled. The scene cuts to the massive earth magic tower in Grandia, a monument of stone and power. Inside the halls, a man approached a desk. There sat a clerk lost in a deep slumber. A sharp greeting snapped him awake, causing the drowsy attendant to blink in confusion. Recognizing the visitor, he jumped up with a cheerful grin, though he secretly wondered what a kid like this wanted. He judged Logan's cheap suit immediately, doubting he was a noble. He figured Logan was just there for some low-tier trash. Praying the boy would just buy a few basic scrolls and leave, he maintained a polite professional smile. Then, Logan dropped a bombshell. He needed 150 scrolls of destruction magic. The clerk's heart skipped a beat. Stunned, he tried to keep his cool. Logan then presented his Cooper Bank certificate, daring the man to check the balance. As the clerk tallied the funds, his jaw hit the floor. 4 million gold pieces. It was an absolute fortune. Trembling, he stammered out an apology and insisted on personally escorting Logan to the VIP upper floors. Logan remained unfazed. He knew destruction magic was a lethal fourth circle area spell, though usually too slow for actual combat. But he didn't care about war. He saw it as the ultimate cheat code for high-speed construction and development. Soon, Logan was face-to-face with Radis the Tower Master, who stared at him in disbelief. Radis couldn't hide his desperation. It had been decades since a whale this big had walked through their doors. The moment he heard about the massive order, the master had literally sprinted down to meet this mysterious young lord. Despite 5 generations of prestige, the tower only had 1.5 million gold left. They were basically broke. Logan smelled blood in the water. He played it humble, claiming House McLean was just a band of Southwest thieves. Radis immediately apologized for his staff's rudeness, promising to punish the apprentice. Logan just waved it off like a boss. While the clerk internally spiraled, Radis panicked. He realized he had almost fumbled the easiest payday of his life. He wondered why any noble would waste millions on construction scrolls during these peaceful times. It made no sense. He cursed the critics who called his tower weak, but he had burned through his budget way too fast. Seeing Logan as a golden goose, Radis decided to play a dangerous game and squeeze every coin from him. He sighed, telling Logan that fulfilling such a massive order might be impossible due to staff shortages. Logan didn't flinch. He stared Radis down and asked what he intended to do about it. The master froze. This wasn't the reaction he wanted. He doubled down, claiming the production costs were astronomical. Without a word, Logan stood up. He sighed, saying it was a tragedy they couldn't reach a deal. As he headed for the door, he casually mentioned he planned to buy 150 scrolls every single month. He added that since this tower was too small for him, he'd just take his business to the royals. Radis lost it. He lunged in front of Logan, blocking the exit while begging for a second chance. "Did you say every month?" he gasped. Logan confirmed it, noting he needed 900 scrolls over the next half year. Radis looked like he had just seen God. He stared at Logan as if he were an angel sent from heaven. Logan smirked, pointing out that, if one shipment was too hard, a 6-month contract would be their worst nightmare. Radis hesitated, admitting to Logan that fulfilling such a massive request might actually be a total disaster. Intrigued, Logan pressed for the reason. The master explained that crafting 4th Circle scrolls required a 5th Circle mage's oversight, but the tower was currently starving for elite staff. Logan didn't even flinch. He locked eyes with Radis, bluntly asking how he intended to fix this. Radis was completely caught off guard. It wasn't the reaction he expected yet. He continued, claiming the production cost per unit was astronomically high. Hearing that, Logan stood up with icy composure, lamenting that it was a shame they couldn't work together. He walked toward the door, casually mentioning his plan to buy 150 scrolls every single month, but since the tower was struggling, he'd just head to the Royal Tower instead. Radis hit the panic button, lunging in front of Logan to block his path with pure desperation. He frantically asked if Logan truly meant 150 scrolls monthly. Logan simply confirmed it, adding that he'd need 900 scrolls total over 6 months. Radis looked like he'd just reached heaven, staring at Logan like he was a divine angel. Then Logan casually pointed something out. If producing 150 scrolls was already a struggle, a 6-month order would be a nightmare. Just as Logan turned his back, Radius went full drama mode, diving for the warrior's dusty boots. He wailed that they'd handle the order, but Logan scoffed, questioning if he could actually deliver. Radius began frantically polishing Logan's shoes with his robes, calculating 10,000 gold per magic scroll. Greed shimmered in his eyes as he realized Logan's massive spending spree meant a legendary payday. He could rake in 9 million gold. Dropping the act, he suddenly pitched a different strategy. Why not just hire mages? Logan blinked, wondering exactly which mages the old man meant. Usually mages were way too proud and expensive to be used for common manual construction labor. Logan figured a 4th Circle mage equaled 300 scrolls, but where would he find one? Radius quickly corrected him. There was no way he was lending out a high-level master. Even the master didn't have that kind of pull. Instead, he made a surprising counteroffer. He'd dispatch a crack team 9 2nd Circle mages, led by 1 3rd Circle disciple. They were experts in teamwork, and all he asked was to lower the total scroll count. Logan paused, realizing this swap might actually be more efficient than a mountain of scrolls. Still, he couldn't help but wonder what kind of specialists he was actually getting. Moments later, a group of shell-shocked, haggard young men stumbled into the room before him. They looked like they'd survived a meat grinder. Their miserable state left Logan genuinely stunned. Before Logan could speak, the master dismissed the exhausted squad back to their cramped quarters. The mages bolted like they'd seen a ghost, leaving Logan standing there, completely baffled. He turned to the master, noting they looked one step away from the literal grave. Radius insisted they were just the young bloods, the most experienced builders in the entire tower. Despite their pathetic appearance, Logan sensed the raw mana radiating from the 3rd Circle leader. They were all in their 20s, true prodigies who clearly knew how to handle heavy magic. Even with their talent, something felt off. Logan's gut told him there was a catch. Why would Radius dump his best disciples in the sticks? Logan decided to call his bluff. He argued that trading 2nd Circle mages for magic scrolls was a total rip-off for him. The master stayed cool, promising that 10 mages were more than enough to finish the job. That was when Logan's signature predatory smirk appeared as he prepared to squeeze the master. He proposed a new deal, 120 scrolls, plus the mages for 1.2 million gold. Radius tried to play it cool, but the sheer audacity of the price clearly rattled him. To Logan, this was an absolute heist, knowing these mages were far from ordinary labor. He was shocked when the master actually agreed, immediately shoving a fresh contract toward him. Logan scanned the terms, stunned that anyone would sign off on such a lopsided agreement. The ink was still wet, and a bad feeling started gnawing at the back of his mind. Suddenly, the door crashed open as Chief Clayton stormed in, dragging 2 frantic disciples behind him. The elder roared at the master, accusing him of selling out his students for cheap profit. Clayton, a powerful 5th Circle mage, looked ready to incinerate the room in his fury. He demanded to know if his disciples were being shipped off on another suicide mission. The master just shrugged, claiming it was all for the greater good of the magic tower. Clayton snapped, asking why his students were always the ones chosen for the hardest labor. They had just returned from one hellish task, only to be thrown into another immediately. The master retorted that hardship builds character, while Clayton yelled about his blatant abuse. He claimed the master had lost his mind since Clayton became an elder last year. Watching the chaos, Logan realized this was a classic power struggle between rival factions. Radius was clearly trying to break Clayton's rising influence by overworking his talented disciples. Logan watched the drama unfold with a satisfied grin. The tower's infighting was his gain. The tower master leveled a frigid gaze at Clayton, declaring that if he defied orders, their ultimate fate meant absolutely nothing to him. He ordered the elder and his flock to vanish immediately, prompting a stunned Clayton to ask if he was truly serious. Facing that harsh ultimatum, Clayton began weaving his mana, his intentions shifting toward a violent confrontation. Even as the atmosphere pulsed with impending destruction, the master remained unshaken, coldly questioning if Clayton was prepared for the consequences. While mana swirled around Clayton, the very foundation of the room began to tremor and crack under the pressure. A terrified disciple screamed for them to stand down before the room exploded, while Clayton roared at the master to defend himself. The master watched the elder's combat stance with terrifying stillness, until suddenly, Logan's hand came crashing down like a thunderclap. The heavy impact on the table silenced the chaos instantly. Logan stood there, radiating a calm that made the surrounding fury look pathetic. Total silence gripped the room. Both masters were left speechless, while the younger mages watched with their jaws on the floor. Logan didn't say a word, simply sliding over the official document he had just stamped. The contract was signed and ready. Now that the deal was legally binding, he looked at the 10 stunned mages and signaled for them to move out. He stared down the 2 powerful men, telling them to settle their drama elsewhere because his contract was now set in stone. Replacing a tower master was irrelevant to him. The business would thrive regardless of who held the title. Looking embarrassed, the master apologized for the pathetic display and promised Logan the scrolls would be dispatched at the earliest opportunity. But Clayton's fury hadn't faded, cutting in to state they weren't finished. The master's temper flared right back at the interruption. He snarled, asking if Clayton dared to challenge the Earth Tower's authority, before brutally reminding the elder to remember his lowly rank. Clayton didn't flinch. If that was how things were, he was done. He'd be leaving alongside his loyal disciples. Logan and the master stood paralyzed by the elder's sudden defiance. The master eventually sputtered out that Clayton had finally lost his mind. A high-ranking elder working at a construction site. It was unheard of. Logan's eyes widened as he shouted his disbelief. He hadn't budgeted for a 5th circle powerhouse, but Clayton insisted he didn't want a separate salary for the job. The elder just wanted to help his students finish the task efficiently. Hearing this, Logan's attitude shifted into a deep, respectful bow. Logan swore to treat him with the utmost honor. In return, Clayton asked for a single day's grace for his exhausted team. They needed time to recover their strength before the journey. Logan readily agreed to the reasonable request. Logan told the master to meet him at the west gate by noon. The next morning, a carriage rolled through the tower gate. Logan was already there, leaning casually against the stone wall with a traveler's pack slung over his sturdy shoulder. While waiting for the mages, he couldn't help but smirk at how yesterday's chaos had turned into a literal jackpot. Normally, securing a 5th circle mage would drain at least 1,000,000 gold coins from any family's treasury. Yet he'd secured a legend for peanuts. His mind drifted to his territory, feeling an urgent pull to return home immediately. Time was a luxury. Supplies needed to reach the capital, and a mountain of other problems awaited his direct intervention. His strategic planning was shattered when a sharp voice suddenly called out his name, cutting through the morning air. It was Rena. She noted how long it had been since their last encounter, and Logan offered a simple, informal greeting. The air turned frigid as Rena snapped that they were far from being on a first-name basis anymore. Sensing the sudden awkwardness, Logan pivoted instantly, layering his voice with a thick, sarcastic coat of formal etiquette. He addressed her as the Princess of the Wolves, dryly noting that her attitude was just as prickly as ever. Rena looked down from her ornate carriage with pure disdain, her face partially obscured by an expensive fluttering fan. She mentioned the nasty rumors circulating the capital, claiming she'd heard Logan was sinking his hands into some extremely shady business. She feigned concern for the McLean family's struggle, but her eyes betrayed her true hope that they were finally broke. Logan kept his expression a perfect mask of politeness, even as her insults poked at his family's pride. He reminded her of his relentless drive for profit, calmly stating that his family's affairs were strictly none of her concern. Rena sneered, bringing up the compensation she'd paid him during their failed engagement, like it was some great charity. The sum wasn't small, she claimed, but then again, such a payout was probably normal for a low-life thief like him. Logan felt a sudden violent urge to slap the smug look off her face, but he just nodded to end things. He turned to leave, tossing back a biting remark about how her very presence made the air feel contaminated and repulsive. But as he stepped away, Rena's voice stopped him. She had heard about his legendary exploits during the recent feudal war. She brought up reports of his mysterious new weaponry, finally asking what he would think about selling the secret to her. Struggling to keep his cool while dying to ditch the conversation, Logan played off the weapon's value, claiming it was trivial. Despite the awkwardness, he politely turned down the offer and bailed. He practically vanished from Rena's carriage, a high IQ move, honestly, leaving her staring after him with pure loathing. Retreating, Logan brooded over his fame for selling stamina meds. Even with his newfound influence, not a single noble cared about the looming war in the sticks. Rena was no different. These aristocrats were too obsessed with their own drama. Logan knew his crossbow's design was dangerously basic. He just needed to milk its power a few more times before the blueprints leaked to the wrong hands. Once that happened, mass production was inevitable. Suddenly, a voice broke his trance. It was Clayton and his squad. Surprised to see Logan off course, Clayton questioned his detour. Without a word, Logan started physically, shoveling Clayton and the disciples toward their goal, grumbling about a massive headache he'd just encountered. 3 carriages soon tore through the forest. Logan sat with a fuming Clayton and one of his followers. Clayton was huffing like a tilted parrot. Glancing around the posh interior, he noted the carriage was huge, fitting 6 easily with a pro driver at the helm. He figured Logan had dropped a bag, just to flex. Clayton's mood tanked, complaining that this much clout chasing was a total waste of gold. His disciple tried to play peacemaker, but Clayton wasn't having it. Watching this, Logan realized mages and their massive egos were a package deal. He decided to play the humble host, telling Clayton it was a privilege to serve elite casters, and that this was the bare minimum. Getting a 5th circle mage for free meant a little glazing was a small price to pay. Clayton just glared outside. As darkness swallowed the trail, the group hit the brakes. Logan signaled for the team to set up camp, stating they'd bunk down for the night and grind out the rest of the journey at dawn. Logan lit a fire and slipped into meditation until a blade whistled through the air. An assassin had struck. Sensing the killing intent, Logan tilted his head, dodging the knife without even breaking his focus. "Who's there?" A figure stepped from the shadows, impressed by his reflexes. Logan rose as the man began yapping, mocking him as the drug lord who made a killing selling weird pills in the capital. Surrounded by 5 thugs, Logan realized these were just low-tier bandits, looking for an easy payday. He let out a tired sigh. He had been vibing with his meditation, but this was a decent chance to field test his progress, since they were kind enough to crash his session. Unsheathing his blade, Logan warned the bandits they were officially his new training dummies. One thug just laughed, but the disrespect didn't last. In one fluid cinematic motion, Logan painted the grass red with his throat. The laughter died instantly. The others froze, staring at their comrade's corpse completely, bewildered by Logan's god-tier speed. One cursed him as another bandit charged in blind with rage. Logan shifted into an aggressive stance the second the goon entered his kill zone, ready to end it. With a lightning-fast parry, he opened the bandit's gut and sent him flying. The guy hit a tree and went dark. 2 down, 3 to go. The realization finally hit. They were hopelessly outmatched. The leader screamed for a retreat, only to find his legs had turned to lead. He couldn't move. That's when Logan's aura flared. His stance shifted into something hauntingly familiar to anyone who knew the greats. He was channeling Felix's secret tech surging mana into his steel to mirror the master's devastating strike. The aura blade crackled. With a heavy stomp, he swung, tearing through the atmosphere with raw, terrifying force. The shockwave slammed into 2 bandits, deleting them instantly. But then the connection snapped. The aura vanished, leaving Logan momentarily puzzled. Maintaining that level of power was a massive drain. He looked at the final survivor, who was currently shaking on the ground, paralyzed by fear. Logan smirked. He'd peaked the technique thanks to Felix's guidance. While he was analyzing his gains, the last rat started crawling away, desperate for a second chance at life. Logan reflected on the compression needed for that aura blade, comparing it to the Duke's pressure technique he'd witnessed before. Felix had shown him the Force Blade, a light version, but Logan knew perfect imitation was still miles away. A flush crept up Logan's face as he whispered in disbelief. He actually pulled off a Force Blade. The moment was fleeting. Suddenly, his eyes locked onto the final bandit, desperately scrambling to escape. Logan's cold gaze met the man's tearful eyes. The thug knew he was cooked. Logan readied his next strike. Terror paralyzed the survivor. Advancing slowly, Logan mused that dominating foes with raw sword force was the true pressure blade. He moved in for the final plunge. The last bandit's life was hanging by a single thread of fate. That predatory smirk returned. Logan realized this technique was officially ready for some real-world carnage. After the kill, he scanned the bodies. Had he gone overboard, suddenly a sharp voice pierced the silence behind him. Logan jumped. Clayton stood there, having witnessed the whole bloodbath, looking absolutely livid. Logan turned, baffled by the mage's fury. Did Clayton think he was too brutal even against low-life robbers? If Clayton bailed now, Logan's plans would crumble. He braced for the worst, but things took a sharp turn. Clayton stared intensely before dropping a bombshell. "You're incredible," he praised. Logan just stood there, completely floored. Still acting grumpy, Clayton admitted that despite his limited martial knowledge, Logan's power was freakishly unnatural for his age. Logan thanked him, playing it cool. He realized the mage wasn't actually mad, that was just his resting angry face. The two trekked back through the woods. An awkward, heavy silence settled over the unlikely duo. Logan glanced over, calculating. He had intentionally fought far from camp to hide his true monster-like potential. Was Clayton stalking him this whole time? Logan finally decided to break the tension with a question. Clayton sighed, mentioning his disciples lacked a proper mentor. He was just trying to give them a fighting chance. Logan reassured him he was doing great. Still, he wondered why Clayton was suddenly opening up like this. Clayton stopped dead in his tracks. He turned toward Logan with a stern, warning look in his eyes. He demanded that once they reached McLean territory, his students must have guaranteed breaks to train with him. Clayton offered to overwork himself to ensure they got that chance. "Do we have an understanding?" he asked. Logan agreed instantly. But then he spotted something bizarre. Mana was surging up from the earth behind Clayton. He traced the flow. The energy was snaking directly toward the tent, where the young mages were fast asleep. Clayton pressed for an answer about their deal. Logan nodded, but his mind was racing with questions. Why was Clayton secretly channeling his own mana to his students? He truly was a devoted guardian. Logan noted his extreme dedication. Clayton simply grumbled that a teacher must do the absolute bare minimum. Is throwing hands with a tower master considered the minimum? Logan joked. Clayton's response was immediate. That old geezer started it, Clayton snapped. The next day, the McLean family banners finally danced in the breeze. Back at the estate, Logan stepped into his father's office. Patrick was waiting, ready for a serious talk. Word of Logan's travels had already arrived. Patrick asked if his time in the capital had actually taught him anything. Logan confirmed the experience was legendary. Patrick nodded, satisfied that his son hadn't just wasted his time. Anything else to report? Patrick asked. Logan knew he had to deliver this news carefully. Deciding to just rip the bandage off, he casually mentioned that his capital business venture was a massive success. Patrick froze. He stood up, eyes wide, demanding to know exactly what kind of business Logan meant. Logan admitted he'd been peddling the medicine Patrick gave him earlier. Patrick looked like he was seeing stars. You went to the capital to sell stimulants, Patrick gasped, clutching his head in utter disbelief. He reminded Logan that while he promised freedom, this was a massive shock to his system. He warned Logan to protect the family name next time. Logan quickly promised to keep things low-key. Logan felt a wave of relief that his dad wasn't exploding. Then he dropped the real bombshell. I also made friends with the Sword Duke. Patrick paralyzed. You mean Felix Esperanza? He choked out. Patrick's temper flared again. Don't tell me you sold that shady medicine to the Duke as well. With a shameless grin, Logan confirmed he did exactly that. Patrick looked ready to lose his mind. How far will you drag our name through the dirt? He roared. Logan remained perfectly chill through the storm. He pulled out a book from the Duke. In exchange, I snagged a top-tier intermediate sword manual, Logan revealed. The rage vanished instantly. Patrick snatched the book, his eyes widening as he read the legendary title aloud. He praised the Iron Blood manual, calling it a legitimate intermediate style, officially endorsed by the Duke himself. Logan smirked, knowing the endorsement was a total lie he'd forged himself. Memories of his previous life flashed back, recalling when an imperial merchant salvaged this manual from ancient ruins. It was once hailed as the ultimate, intermediate technique. Initially, that greedy merchant only peddled copies to a handful of elite nobles, but the secrets eventually leaked, flooding the entire black market with cheap transcriptions. Soon it became so widespread that even commoners mastered its strikes. Logan calculated that this mass leak was 10 years away. Arming his family's knights now would be a massive power-up. By layering the sword chi and divine secrets on top, his father and Ronin would possess a lethal ultimate move. This specific style maximized raw physical power to bypass any risk of internal recoil or damage. Patrick would usually reject such a reckless path, but the Duke's forged name guaranteed his immediate approval. Scanning the pages, Patrick gasped, realizing this technique was leagues beyond their family's traditional style. His hands shook as he gripped the manual, finally understanding how scarce intermediate skills truly were. He realized this lack of high-level guidance was why his own progress had stalled for 10 long years. Patrick declared that mastering these moves would amplify the entire Order's combat power by 30%. He wondered aloud how to ever repay such royal generosity. Logan smirked. This was the perfect opening for his plan. He had a bold proposal. Patrick should master the style himself and then showcase it to Felix. Before Logan could finish, Patrick bolted toward the door, tossing a heavy official seal at his son. He barked that training was now his sole priority, leaving Logan in total command of the estate. In that moment, the weight of the situation hit Logan. His father had literally handed him the family crest, the ultimate symbol of authority. Patrick vanished, yelling for Logan to manage the estate. He vowed to return only after achieving perfection, leaving Logan to assist Dwayne with all the logistics. With a frantic thanks, he vanished, leaving Logan with a mountain of unfinished business and zero answers. Logan stood alone in the silent office, clutching the crest with a look of pure bewilderment. He stared at the seal, realization dawning he now had total freedom to execute his master plan. He silently vowed to wrap up every one of his projects before Patrick returned from seclusion. Suddenly, Dwayne burst in, screaming before Logan could even process his newfound power. He'd heard rumors of Logan's capital exploits, and immediately skipped the pleasantries to beg for cold cash. Skeptical Logan questioned what happened to the massive spoils from the Tesseron conflict. Dwayne exploded, venting that those funds couldn't even cover their basic maintenance. Between fortress upkeep and the war's labor shortage, their production was destined to plummet this year. With the Kiros cutting all aid, a desperate Dwayne fell to his knees, pleading for a handout. He'd heard about Logan's capital riches, but Logan simply flashed a mysterious smile and apologized. The money was already gone. Dwayne's jaw dropped in disbelief as he demanded to know the truth. How could anyone blow through a fortune that quickly? Logan just stared down at him unbothered. His silent grin infuriated Dwayne, who begged him to stop joking, but Logan remained eerily composed. Sweating bullets, Dwayne realized Logan wasn't kidding. He bowed low again, his desperation reaching its peak. He frantically asked where it went. Logan casually revealed he dropped 1.2 million gold coins, high-tier scrolls, magical artifacts, and mountains of supplies. The treasury was officially bone dry. Dwayne stuttered back the words, muttering that a little charity wouldn't save their dying economy. Then came the bombshell. 1 million gold went to food alone. Dwayne froze, questioning his own hearing. He asked for a repeat, and Logan confirmed he'd be feeding the people with that entire fortune. This massive distribution would last for an entire year. Dwayne exploded, screaming that Logan had lost his mind. Logan expected this outburst. Being a war hero didn't suddenly make him seem sane to the accountant. Dwayne's opinion wasn't changing that easily. Logan maintained his cool, assuring him of his absolute sanity. He then asked if the supplies were sufficient. Dwayne nodded dumbly before trailing off in confusion. Staring at the massive haul of materials and scrolls, Logan's mind raced with blueprints for a project of impossible scale. "We're building a dam," Logan stated bluntly. Fast forward 2 weeks, and the gears of fate began to turn. A cold, uncompromising decree hit the city streets like a thunderclap. The Lord was demanding every able body for forced labor. The city split in two. McLean's people were herded to the west gate, while Storm Fortress gathered at the east. They finally snapped a man from Tesseron spat, his voice trembling with rage at the nobles' relentless exploitation. A McLean local barked in agreement, calling it absolute insanity to drag them from their fields during the peak harvest. "We survived the bloody war just for our own lord to work us into the dirt," another voice cried out. Fury turned into desperate defiance as the crowd realized this summons offered them absolutely zero choice. Flee and be hunted, work and collapse, or stay and starve. Every path seemed to lead to an early grave. With nothing left to lose, they traded sickles for pitchforks, ready to turn their desperation into a bloody rebellion. A sea of angry souls surged toward the McLean estate. A young man leaned toward an elder, his voice shaking. "Are we really doing this?" he whispered. The elder's eyes hardened, growling that the lords treated them worse than stray dogs. "We're eating grass while they live in luxury," the old man roared. "Today we take our stand." Sweat beaded on the boy's brow as he gripped his tool. He'd rather die fighting than live as a slave. Suddenly, the heavy castle gates groaned open. The rebels held their breath, tightening their grip on their makeshift weapons. As the dust cleared, the silhouettes of armored knights emerged. "Get ready for the distribution," one knight boomed. The murderous tension in the air evaporated instantly, replaced by a wave of confused murmurs. "Distribution," the crowd whispered. Their eyes widened. Were those sacks filled with fresh loaves of bread? The elder hissed for everyone to stay back, sensing a noble's trap. But then the world stopped moving. A heavy sack thudded at his feet. The knight announced, "By the direct order of young Master Logan, every laborer will receive a full month's worth of grain." He gestured for the stunned crowd to form a line. Weapons hit the dirt with a collective thud. The promise of food turned a riot into a desperate rush for survival. Clutching the heavy sack of grain, the old man stared at the ground, his body trembling with sheer shock. He looked up, tears in his eyes, and let out a deafening roar. "Long live Logan McLean." The cry caught fire. Smiles broke through the grime as thousands of voices united to hail their young master. High above on the ramparts, Logan watched the scene. Dwayne turned to him, wondering if the forced decree was necessary. "Couldn't we have just asked them?" Dwayne sighed. "They would have come for the food alone." Logan shook his head. "In this world, no one trusts a noble's word. Not even a fraction would have shown up." He explained that, to commoners, the only difference between good and bad lords is how much they steal. Logan noted that even his own father valued knights over the people, believing steel was a nation's only strength. That's why Patrick kept 50 expensive knights while the people withered. It was a cycle Logan had to break. By forcing them to gather, Logan ensured they would witness the miracle with their own eyes and truly believe. Noticing Dwayne's intense gaze, Logan smirked. "What, is there something on my face?" Dwayne chuckled, admitting the young master had become a constant source of shock lately. Logan patted his shoulder. "Don't get soft on me. Since you trust me so much, let's start the real work." Dwayne's face soured instantly. 2 million gold for a dam, Master, please, this is pure madness. He questioned if such a feat was even humanly possible. Logan just laughed at his administrator's panic. "You sound just like Heir and Clayton," Logan teased. "They nearly fainted when I showed them the blueprints." He recalled their dinner meeting where the two masters were left utterly speechless by his architectural ambition. Logan had confirmed his plan to bend the very flow of nature, demanding absolute precision in the execution. "Look at our land," Logan pointed out. "McLean is choked by these barren mountains, keeping us poor. The northern peaks acted like a wall, preventing the massive Lutter River from reaching their thirsty fields." His solution: order Heir and Clayton to carve a gargantuan passage straight through the heart of the mountains. Heir had scoffed, saying it would be easier to just level the entire mountain range to the ground. But Logan had a vision. They weren't just digging a hole, they were building a tunnel to change history. It connects straight to the Ludder River, acting as a massive 30-meter-wide gateway. This was a dam, a specialized Western construction method Logan claimed to have discovered. In truth, Logan was bluffing. This was actually a futuristic flood control technique. It wouldn't even be discovered for another 20 years. Logan barely understood the mechanics. But with a master dwarf and a fifth circle mage, he knew it could work. If they spearheaded this, McLean's desolate western wastes would soon become lush, fertile plains. Clayton tried to weigh in, but Heir cut him off, prioritizing the perfect location. He lectured about soil integrity and water pressure, terrified the tunnel might actually collapse. "We'll need arched supports and mages," Heir muttered. Clayton turned to him, stunned. He asked if Logan's wild plan was actually possible. Heir couldn't even believe his own logic. Hearing their doubt, Logan swirled his wine and gave a confident nod. "It's doable." Cold sweat broke out on their brows. Heir desperately tried to backtrack, citing his workload. He rambled about the new mining ops, but Logan shut him down instantly. "That's why the scrolls and mages are here," Logan smirked. "Now go find that mountain." Heir sighed in defeat. He'd suspected a trap when Logan offered that massive feast. A luxury meal followed by manual labor. Clayton watched, wondering if this was all legal. Arriving at the site, Clayton took his stance and began channeling his vast mana. Workers watched with bated breath, but one remained calm. "Logan's here. We're safe." Heir finally signaled Clayton, shouting that it was time to unleash his power. Clayton slammed his mana-charged hand down, causing the mountain's surface to explode into dust. Everyone scrambled for cover as jagged stone fragments rained down from the sky. Heir lunged forward and shoved Clayton aside. "I told you to go easy, old man." Logan watched, explaining that beyond brute strength, there was mana. A power he now saw. He witnessed the Earth's raw essence flowing from Clayton's heart, shattering the stone foundations. Intricate mana patterns wove through the wall, breaking it apart. Logan was absolutely floored. His force core had pushed his senses to an insane level. Clayton smiled, noticing Logan's awe. "Watch closely, kid," Clayton grinned. "That was just the warm-up. Now for the real show." Initially unimpressed, Logan's eyes widened as Clayton suddenly snapped his fist shut. In a heartbeat, the scattered debris began to defy gravity, floating before the mage. Logan realized it instantly. The rocks were fusing into a gargantuan, terrifying structure. The sheer scale was mind-blowing. The young warrior could only stare up, mouth agape. While Heir cowered behind Logan's leg, Clayton forged the stones into a massive golem. Stunned that such a titan was built without tools, Logan's tactical mind began to race. If we built an army of these, construction would be instant. And the war, easy. Trembling with excitement, Logan grabbed Clayton's hands. "How many more can you make?" Clayton, caught up in the hype, asked if his students could join the fun. Since they were from the Earth Magic Tower, they were definitely capable of creating golems. Logan's eyes glowed, but Clayton quickly dropped a reality check regarding their limits. "The core formula requires a fifth circle mage. My students will need mana stones. Even then, their golems would be tiny and pathetic compared to this rocky titan." Logan's face fell. Mana stones were as legendary as mithril, or the rarest calcione. It is a rare natural ore. You cannot just manufacture it in a lab. Because they boost magical power, their market price is absolutely astronomical. Mana stones were too expensive for digging. But what about the cost of war? Is victory worth the investment? He looked at Clayton. "Can your golem get even stronger?" Clayton confirmed it. Mana stones were the key. They'd supercharge the golem's speed and durability to godlike levels. But there was a catch. As a fifth circle mage, Clayton required nothing less than top-tier high-quality mana stones. Luckily, a low-grade stone was enough for a second circle unit. It'd outmuscle any man, and run for 24 hours straight. Logan crunched the numbers. A low-quality stone likely cost a full gold piece, a heavy price for standard labor. Usually the cost-benefit didn't move the needle, but for a lightning-fast war, it'd be a total game-changer. Suddenly, Dwayne sprinted onto the site. He saw the massive golem obliterating the mountainside and completely lost his mind. Terror painted Dwayne's face. Logan tried to talk him down, but the man was too far gone to listen. Logan explained the tunnel plan, but Dwayne was paralyzed. Fear had clamped its icy grip around his throat. Panic won. Screaming about warning the patriarch, Dwayne bolted from the scene like he'd seen a vengeful ghost. Logan sighed and turned to Heir. "Take the crew to the water channel. We don't need anyone wasting time here." The golem was a one-man army for tunneling. Heir nodded, barking orders to get the workers moving immediately. Logan stood back, his mind racing. 3 massive projects were now live simultaneously, and the pressure was exhilarating. The dam's tunnel, the water channel, and the new mine, each one a vital piece of his grand design. Thanks to early drilling results, the mine was already ahead of schedule. It was his top priority from day one. He'd been drowning in dam construction since leaving the capital. The mine had been neglected for far too long. Time to get my hands dirty, Logan thought. He decided a personal inspection was mandatory for the following morning. The next day, the mine was a beehive of chaos. People swarmed everywhere with Hamar trapped right in the center. The dwarf looked ready to explode. Logan strolled up casually, mentioning it had been a while since they talked. Hamar snapped instantly. A while? I've been running across this territory like a madman because of you. Rage boiled over. The dwarf was at his breaking point, his face flushed with pure, unadulterated frustration. I'm done. Just kill me now, he bellowed. This pace is impossible. No one can work like this. He ranted about the lack of breaks and the crushing weight of the entire project resting on his shoulders alone. Logan didn't interrupt. He let the storm pass in silence while the other workers watched, trembling for Hamar. Sensing the tension, a worker whispered that they should intervene. But Logan simply stepped forward and touched Hamar's shoulder. I know you've been carrying us, Logan said softly. So from now on, you're the sole administrator here. Hamar froze. Disbelief washed over him. Was this a promotion, or just more soul-crushing labor in disguise? Are you for real? Hamar stammered. He realized Logan was essentially dumping every last responsibility onto his plate. Logan felt a pang of guilt. The dwarf had seen right through his reward. It was definitely more work. Flashing a playful grin, Logan held out his pinky. Finish the construction and I promise you'll get a legendary vacation. Exhausted, Hamar tried to swat the hand away, but Logan's grip was like a vice firm and unyielding. Don't break my finger, the dwarf yelped in pain. Logan just laughed it off, playing it cool as always. While Hamar sulked on the dirt, Logan casually fixed his hair. Relax, Hamar. I'm just trying to lighten the mood. He turned his gaze to the mine. It was progressing fast, but the dam remained the ultimate wildcard. Success was the only option. He tapped his communication orb, connecting with his loyal comrade Philip for an update. Philip delivered the good news: materials were on track. Even better, a new timber deal was officially locked in. That's an extra 100,000 gold a month, Philip reported. The sheer scale of the profit was staggering. Logan's face lit up. Philip shared the excitement, imagining the day this barren land finally became a paradise. Once the mine and land are cleared, this place will be unrecognizable, Philip mused, dreaming of the future glory. Logan went quiet, staring into the orb. The weight of what was coming next year flickered in his eyes. Visit next year, Logan replied. When Philip asked why the delay, Logan simply went silent, hiding the truth. Philip didn't push it. Instead, he dropped a bombshell. Rumors were tearing through the capital about the royal family. Something's wrong at the palace, Philip warned. Logan admitted he'd heard whispers at the Sword Duke's estate too. It sounded grave, though the specifics remained shrouded in mystery. Keep your ears open, Logan urged his friend. As the connection cut, Logan's mind drifted. He remembered the grim history of his previous life with chilling clarity. This coming winter, the king would draw his last breath, and then, the flames of civil war would consume everything. Deep down, uncertainty gnawed at him. If the king's demise was truly premature, his memories were still golden. Otherwise, the timeline of history would fracture. Logan knew he couldn't gamble everything until he saw the truth. His first move, fortifying the McLean domain. He ordered Philip to dump every spare cent into an emergency hoard. The mission was clear: stockpile enough weapons and steel to outfit a 500-man battalion immediately. Philip broke into a cold sweat. He stammered, claiming the request was insane and practically impossible to pull off. We only have 100 knights, he argued, but Logan's cold reply that this was for the infantry left him fuming. Philip exploded, asking if Logan had lost his damn mind. Equipping common soldiers was a massive, expensive waste. Logan tuned out the noise. To the outside world, he looked crazy, but he was playing a high-stakes game. The previous war's bloodbath had crippled their workforce. He couldn't let history repeat its tragic, deadly cycle. His goal was surgical efficiency, minimize the draft while turning his small forces into an elite, unstoppable wall. Arming every single soldier wasn't just a whim. It was the backbone of his survival strategy for the family. Logan stared Philip down, asking if his instincts had ever steered them wrong. Philip went silent, unable to argue. With a confident smirk, Logan commanded the plan to proceed. Philip sighed, defeated, and agreed to investigate the rumors. As Philip vanished into the shadows, Logan mapped out the future. Money, food, and steel were the three pillars. Between the secret mine, the new dam, and upgraded weaponry, the pieces for their legendary ascent were falling into place. Everything felt perfect, until reality hit him in the form of a mountain of endless, soul-crushing paperwork. Logan sat buried under documents, looking completely defeated. Beside him, Dwayne acted like a relentless drill sergeant. Read this sign that don't stop, Dwayne barked, promised an even bigger pile of documents was coming his way soon. Suddenly, Dwayne snatched a paper away. He scolded Logan for signing without looking, his frustration reaching a boiling point. He questioned if the young master was trying to ruin the territory with such reckless, lazy administrative habits. Logan was drowning in the mundane duties of a lord. But then the doors flew open with a violent crash. Kaisalan burst in his face, pale as a ghost. The mine collapsed, he screamed. Hamar is buried alive inside. The blood drained from Logan's face. He launched himself from his chair, his heart hammered against his ribs. Panic flared as Kaisalan detailed the disaster. A massive tunnel section had surrendered to the weight of the earth. 50 meters of solid rock had come crashing down, sealing Hamar in a dark, suffocating grave with no exit. "Did you find him?" Logan roared. Dwayne blinked, confused about when they even acquired a secret mine in the first place. Ignoring Dwayne's confusion, Logan bolted. The 50-meter collapse was a death sentence if they didn't act within minutes. He didn't explain. He didn't wait. He just sprinted for the exit, leaving a bewildered Dwayne shouting at his back. Thundering toward the site on horseback, Logan arrived in a cloud of dust and demanded to see the damage. A trembling worker pointed toward the center shaft, the deepest, most treacherous vein they had ever dared to dig. Logan didn't hesitate for a second. He plunged into the suffocating darkness of the cavern without looking back once. Igniting his aura, the scene before him was a nightmare. Colossal boulders choked the path, mocking the desperate rescue efforts. The mine foreman froze as the young master appeared like a vengeful god amidst the dust and falling debris. Logan ordered everyone back. He pressed his hand against the cold stone, surging his mana deep into the earth. 10 faint heartbeats pulsed through the rock. One matched Hamar's unique energy. "They're alive," Logan breathed, eyes sharp. The foreman stammered, baffled by how Logan could possibly sense life through tons of solid, impenetrable granite. "How long to clear this?" Logan snapped. The answer, 3 days, sent a jolt of pure anxiety through his soul. 3 days meant certain death. Oxygen would fail long before the shovels reached the first trapped, gasping survivor. Outside, Logan cornered Clayton. He begged the mages to intervene, promising a king's ransom if they saved his men. Clayton realized this was Hamar's secret project. He nodded, but his eyes were filled with a stern, righteous fire. "Keep your gold," Clayton stated. "We save them because it's right, not for the weight of your heavy purse." Logan bowed in gratitude. Clayton was shocked. Logan was exposing his most valuable secret just to save a few slaves. Without another word, Clayton cast a fortification spell to hold the ceiling while his apprentices began the true work. They hurled mana stones into the rubble. In a flash of blinding light, the very rocks twisted and groaned. Massive stone golems rose from the debris, their giant hands moving tons of earth as the miners watched in terror. The raw intensity of the magic was breathtaking. Logan stood paralyzed as the mages decimated the wall of debris with surgical precision. Seconds felt like hours. Clayton barked orders to accelerate, and Logan didn't just watch. He dove headfirst into the chaos alongside the laborers. Hefting boulders and clearing dirt, the young lord ignored his status. Clayton watched in disbelief. A noble sweating for a dwarf and commoners was unheard of. It was a sight that defied every social norm. Suddenly, a frantic cry pierced the air. The mine master had finally located Hamar. The dwarf lay pinned under jagged rocks, battered and broken. Logan's heart nearly stopped, but as the dust settled, he realized the situation wasn't fatal. Miraculously, the injuries were superficial. A tidal wave of relief crashed over Logan, and he breathed a silent prayer of gratitude to the heavens. Everyone had escaped death by a hair's breadth. Later, amidst the smell of herbs in the infirmary, Logan demanded to know the cause of the disaster. Hamar sheepishly confessed that exhaustion had finally caught up to him. Logan's frustration flared, but the stubborn dwarf insisted he'd be back at the forge by morning. "Enough," Logan snapped, silencing him instantly. He ordered the dwarf to remain in bed until his body was truly mended. Touched by the genuine concern, Hamar roared back that he wouldn't move even if the sky collapsed or a monster invasion began. Stepping out, Logan marveled at the 2-hour rescue. His reflection was cut short by Clayton, who appeared like a ghost with a cryptic smile. The mage praised the mine's unique aura. Cold sweat beaded on Logan's neck had the old man sniffed out the scent of pure gold. Fearing for his secret, Logan chose honesty. He told Clayton that this site was the cornerstone of his entire vision for the future. Without Hamar, his plans would crumble. Besides, Logan added, "A lord who cannot protect his own people has no right to lead." Clayton's eyes sparkled with newfound respect. He leaned in, asking a question that shifted the atmosphere. "Would you like a magic tower here?" Logan froze, his mind reeling. Clayton explained that the current tower leadership was rotting, and these lands were the perfect spot for a new beginning. Overjoyed, Logan stammered that it would be a supreme honor. He eagerly asked about the apprentices and the inevitable mountain of debt it would cost. Clayton waved it off, stating his disciples were ready, and the price was secondary. He wasn't betting on gold, he was betting on Logan's soul. The young lord was floored by the mage's faith. Hamar, eavesdropping from his bed, shouted to ask if Clayton had finally lost his marbles. Logan just chuckled and told his friend to shut up and heal. Fast forward 1 week, Hamar marched in, declaring he was ready to conquer the mine again. He was itching to make up for the lost time. Logan grinned, wishing his most stubborn ally the best of luck in the depths. But as Hamar left, the atmosphere darkened. Dwayne stormed in his face, a mask of terrifying fury and sheer desperation. He demanded a full confession. Why had Logan kept this massive development in the shadows? Logan simply shrugged, claiming he'd forgotten to mention it. "Forgotten?" Dwayne shrieked, his voice hitting a glass-shattering pitch. "How could anyone forget a project of this magnitude?" Logan's face split into a mischievous, wide-eyed grin. "It's a gold mine, Dwayne. The administrator stood frozen, convinced his master was trolling him. A gold mine in these desolate lands, it was impossible. He laughed nervously, asking what kind of hallucination Logan was having. Logan's expression turned deadly, serious. Does this look like a joke, you rascal? He dropped the bombshell. The projected annual revenue was insane. 100 million gold coins every single year. He stared Dwayne down, asking if he'd really prank him about something that life-changing. The silence that followed was deafening. Dwayne's jaw hit the floor as the weight of the words finally registered in his brain. He looked like he was about to see God. When Logan reached out to steady him, Dwayne nearly collapsed into a heap of pure shock. His mind simply couldn't process that many zeros. It was a fortune that could buy the world, and it was all theirs. Deep in the forest, a group of confused administrators marched toward the border, wondering why their vacation had been cut so short. The dam was finished in 3 months, a feat that should have taken 6. They were here for the final inspection, though they were skeptical. Logan welcomed them with a warm, lordly smile, acknowledging their grueling schedules and the importance of their presence. He invited them to stay for the grand unveiling. This wasn't just a wall of stone, it was the birth of a new era. One official scoffed, internally convinced Logan was throwing money into the wind. Diverting the Ludder River into a desert seemed like a fool's errand. He believed not a single blade of grass would grow in that parched, God-forsaken sand, no matter how much water they poured. To him, the funds should have fortified the southern defenses. The rest of the council shared his grim outlook on the Lord's vanity project. They looked to Dwayne for sanity, but found him standing there like a statue, eyes wide and mouth agape at the massive structure. Dwayne realized the truth. This wasn't just irrigation. It was a direct, brilliant tap into the Ludder River's hidden underground veins. With a constant, unstoppable flow from those depths, the wasteland wouldn't just survive nurtured by the river, it would become a paradise. The stage was set. Workers, mages, and skeptical elites all watched as Logan turned to Clayton and gave the fateful command. Without a moment's delay, the mage channeled his power. Hamar grunted, reminding everyone of the blood and sweat poured into these gears. They had worked like demons, so that even a commoner could master the floodgates, but Logan knew this first moment belonged to magic. The gates groaned, ready to unleash a torrent that would rewrite the destiny of the entire territory. This had to be legendary. Logan wanted every soul on the McLean estate to witness the miracle they'd forged with their own hands. A projection of the dam flickered to life, showing massive stone golems stationed like sentinels before the floodgates. Ready to heave the steel, the administrators stood paralyzed by the spectacle, before quickly adjusting to the sheer scale of it. Then Clayton's voice thundered across the valley, barking the final order for the golems to unseal the gates. The giants lunged forward, gripping the iron. Logan's smirk widened in anticipation. But then the atmosphere suddenly shifted. The golems were failing to budge the weight. With a terrifying glare, Clayton turned on Hamar, demanding to know what went wrong. Hamar looked completely blindsided, stammering that he'd already signaled the workers to engage the primary mechanisms. Sensing the disaster, Logan's confidence wavered as a grim flashback triggered. Clayton had warned him this might happen. Lifting the gates was a feat beyond the golems' limits. Their impressive strength was apparently more for show than utility. It would take 100 men cranking the pulleys to win this fight. Thinking fast, Logan pivoted and gave a radical command. Smash the gates. Hamar and Clayton were floored, their jaws dropping as they questioned if their lord had lost his mind. Logan didn't flinch, insisting they could just rebuild later. After a heartbeat of hesitation, Clayton signaled the golems to strike. The golems began, pulverized the gates with heavy blows. The construction crew watched in horror as their masterpiece was systematically destroyed. Suddenly, the iron buckled. A violent deluge exploded outward with insane pressure sweeping the golems away in the white water. Chaos and confusion erupted everywhere, yet Logan simply stood there with a wild, triumphant grin. The laborers who had bled for this project couldn't suppress their emotions, weeping openly as the water finally flowed. Realizing the magnitude of this victory, Logan knew this single moment had just solved their looming food crisis. Despite the shadow of civil war, they'd be planting by spring. Even Dwayne, overcome with hype, tackled Logan's back. He was freaking out, sobbing apologies, and begging for forgiveness, forever doubting Logan's grand vision for the dam. Logan laughed it off, teasing the massive man about why he was turning into such a total crybaby. Not everyone shared the hype, though. Hamar was spiraling in the corner, mourning the massive workload of rebuilding those gates. Clayton offered to oversee the repairs, but Logan shrugged. There was no urgent need to seal the reservoir just yet. He granted them a full week's rest once the mine was finalized. Afterward, Logan pulled Hamar aside for a special promise. A legendary vacation awaited them once this phase ended. Hamar's eyes lit up. Was the young lord actually being serious? Logan gave a firm nod secretly, knowing their schedule